starting to play as Batman. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, The Dark Knight. Same as usual, a little shorter. Aunt Lee in the barber shop turned on the electric hair clipper in her hand. Well, just a little shorter will do, Chu Cheng replied, but it doesn't have to be too short. Aunt Lee started working and said with a smile, just a flat head is good. It looks honest and decent. Girls nowadays like this. Well, actually I'm also considering changing my hairstyle, Chu Cheng said. Oh, really? That's right. College students should have some personality, and it's not bad to try a new image. Girls nowadays like more trendy ones. Aunt Lee continued to agree. Chu Cheng didn't say anything, but in his heart he thought that, if this is the case, wouldn't girls nowadays prefer to jump back and forth? After all, this may not be wrong. Romance luck is definitely not directly related to hairstyle style, but it is definitely related to appearance. But this is understandable, because men are the same. They claim to have installed all kinds of XP systems. Some say they control queens and some control Lali, but in fact they are just talking. Countless examples have proved that for LSP, as long as they are good looking enough, gender can be relaxed. If the appearance is higher, even race can be considered. If the appearance is higher, even the boundary between the living world and the underworld can be blurred. So for players like Chu Cheng, hairstyle is secondary. After all, he is so beautiful that everyone loves him. He can attract countless female fans just by looking at his back. Well, usually only mother fans. Chu Cheng doesn't know why, but he seems to have a face that Zhang Xiao has struggled for 20 years, commonly known as the idol of middle-aged and elderly women. He has moved to this community for more than a year, since he entered college, and he has become familiar with all the aunts in the neighborhood. At this moment, another auntie who came to the barber shop to chat couldn't stand it anymore. Just cut your hair honestly, and don't always think about selling your daughter to others. Xiao Chu is a college student from a prestigious university. Who knows how many girls in the school like her? Aunt Lee, who was the target of this remark, was also unhappy to hear. What's wrong with Arjuan? When she grows up, she may also be admitted to a prestigious university. The two aunties started arguing, and Grandma Wang next to them took the opportunity to take a photo and walked in. Xiao Chu, look, this is the girl I told you about last time. She is so pretty. Can you add each other's contact information in chat? Chu Cheng took a look at the photo that Grandma Wang handed over. The girl in the photo did look pretty and cute. Big watery eyes, flawless skin, long and straight legs, and she was playfully making a V gesture towards the camera. But Chu Cheng's focus was not there. His eyes quickly fell on the metal railing next to him. The poor railing seemed to have been subjected to some unknown force beyond the dimension, which affected its spatial continuity, thus causing its appearance to have an indescribable phenomenon similar to that of a straight man coming out. In layman's terms, it is gay. Well, that's not the point. These days, 9 out of 10 photos of people without makeup are fake, and one of them is a head transplant. The distortion of space is not worth making a fuss about. If it was just this degree, Chu Cheng would not complain. But Chu Cheng pointed to the reflection in the glass curtain wall of the building next to the girl in the photo. Grandma, is there someone else in this mirror? Grandma Wang looked at the beautiful girl in the photo who weighed 100 kilograms outside the mirror and 100 kilograms inside the mirror, and fell into deep thought for a while. After Chu Cheng had his hair cut, he chatted with the neighbors for a while. After finishing, he said goodbye to the aunts with reluctant eyes, went upstairs and went directly back to his apartment. This apartment belongs to his uncle. Because the address happened to be near the university he was attending, his uncle gave the house to him for free for 4 years when he entered the university. This allows Chu Cheng to enjoy this large house without having to live on campus, and he can also avoid accommodation fees. Many classmates were very envious when they knew about his situation, because they thought it meant that Chu Cheng could often bring beautiful girls to his home to play and go to sleep when he was tired. After all, his house was quite big. However, it didn't happen. because that would only affect the speed at which Chu played games. A great man once said that women are a hindrance, but I'm a man who wants to become a world champion. Although Chu Cheng does not have such lofty ideals, he has a dozen games waiting for him to complete without any damage, and a bunch of game materials waiting for him to edit. Chu Cheng, who is an undergraduate student, is also a PO master in the standalone game area of G Station. Because of his superb skills and perseverance in pursuing perfect and injury-free completion, the games he edits often have a sense of deja vu of blockbusters, so he has won many fans. As a conscientious PO who never slacks off, he has always put his career and fans first, and has no time to toss about those things. Ding. After returning home, Chu Cheng had just entered the room and had not had time to do anything when a crisp reminder sounded in his ears, which made him tremble in his heart. Could it be that the system of my master finally arrived after a month of delay? That's right, Chu Cheng is not an original native, but a traveler from planet E, and he has just arrived at the Earth star for a month. Based on the limited knowledge he has obtained from fantasy works, he can judge that he has traveled to a homotopic body in another world, whose life trajectory is almost the same as his. But this world is similar to planet D, but not completely similar. The Earth star is also a world dominated by humans, similar to the human civilization that Chu Cheng is familiar with. But the human civilization in this world has a completely different development process, and the complex evolution over a long period of time has eventually led to the fact that today's Earth star has no national boundaries. That's right, although the Earth star also has continental plates and regional divisions, there is no concept of national boundaries, and it has been like this for many years. In addition, there are many other differences in the Earth star. If all the details are listed one by one, it will take days and nights to finish. But those have little direct impact on Chu Cheng. If time travel is compared to drawing a blind box, he thinks his luck is not too bad. Some of his predecessors traveled to the end of the world, where zombies were rampant. Some traveled to the wasteland rebuilt in the ruins, and some traveled to the immortals where gods and powerful people walked everywhere. Compared with those high-risk planes, his side at least seems to be a stable society. At least from the memories he inherited, he did not find any strange and chaotic phenomena. He has no plugins, and no special skills. As long as he can lie down and wait for death in this life, he will be very happy. Until now. In the early days of online literature, 9 out of 10 time travelers brought systems. The ding prompt sound in the mind is often the beginning of the loser's counterattack and killing everything in seconds. It is said that everything can be rolled, even the omnipotent system is no exception. With the development of online literature, even the system has become more and more old. In the early years, most of the system cheats were about the basic lore. Later, more and more systems simply showed their cards and did not install them. At the beginning of the game, they signed in and put on the full god level skills. One knife can kill everything in seconds. Even if the protagonist is a turtle, you can take it up. Chu Cheng had sneered at this genre when he came across it, but now that he had traveled through time himself, he had changed his mind. He now felt that this system that made him invincible at the beginning of the game was really good, and he must get himself a set. However, when he changed his posture in his heart to call for the system dad but got nothing, he realized that the sound seemed to come from the computer on the desk in the bedroom that had not been turned off all night. It sounded a bit like the prompt sound when the game was downloaded and installed. Chu Cheng was disappointed and puzzled. Although he watched a movie last night, it was not right. He studied the materials a little late and went to bed without turning off the computer, but he didn't seem to download anything. Could it be that when he downloaded the movie, the computer was infected and automatically bundled with some strange things? Chu Cheng shook the mouse and woke up the dozing monitor. Soon he noticed the extra icon on his desktop. Avengers vs Justice League, a new era. Chu Cheng. He actually recognized this game because it happened to be the last game he bought before traveling through time. I still remember that a month ago, before he traveled through time, he excitedly bought this newly released game and downloaded it in the background, and then went out to school. Unexpectedly, not long after he went out, he encountered a mud truck passing through the drainage ditch. He was so exhausted that he didn't even need to go through the rescue process. He fast forwarded to the black man carrying the coffin. When he woke up, he had already arrived in another world. Chu Cheng had forgotten about it after a month in the other world, but when he saw this icon on the computer, he almost petrified on the spot. You know, this other world doesn't have Marvel, DC, and a bunch of superhero themed works, so there is no such thing as Avengers vs. Justice League. So what kind of awesome black technology is this? Gabe Newell's Steam platform has already begun to expand its other dimensional business. Could it be that the Steam platform detected that he bought the game but died before he had time to play it? So in order to prevent customers from spending money but not playing the game, it specially opened a multiverse to root for him? Chu Cheng sat in front of the computer, held his breath, and double-clicked on the game icon. According to the law of online literature time travel, the things you can bring with you from your original world are often cheats. So although I don't know what a game downloaded from another world can be used for, Chu Cheng still has expectations for it. But there is also the possibility that this is really just a game. After the joint logo of the two major companies and the logo of the production company flashed one after another, the screen fell into darkness. Only two silver logos were left in the middle of the black screen. One was the A representing the Avengers, and the other was the JL representing the Justice League, which was divided diagonally on both sides of the screen. The thin silver diagonal line represents the loading progress bar of the game, and a line of small words next to it shows the specific information of the loading. Hero character loading. Character loading successful. Game map loading. Map information lost. Loading failed. Chu Cheng's heart skipped a beat, and just when he felt that it might be bad, another message popped up on the screen. Repairing. New map system loaded. Then there were several consecutive reminders of loading failures that made people nervous, but fortunately, they were all automatically repaired without exception in the end. The game completed loading without any trouble and entered the title interface. Chu Cheng breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, this series of loading and repairing processes also gave him a vague sense of foreboding. Without hesitation, Chu Cheng directly clicked to start the game. The game is a classic single-player action-adventure game, in which players often play superheroes to complete tasks, experience movie-like main plots, or freely explore in open maps. Please choose your hero. Although the prompt to choose a hero was given, Chu Cheng found that he seemed to have no choice. A large number of superhero avatars appeared on the screen, but most of them had a grey question mark on them and could not be selected. The only hero Chu Cheng could choose was the initial hero given by the game, one of the top characters of DC Comics, known as the world's strongest detective, the brain of the Justice League, the Dark Knight of Gotham, Batman. Chapter 2 Beginner's Tutorial. Needless to say, Batman is one of the most famous superhero characters in the world on Chu Cheng's previous life. He has countless labels and halos on his head. What is the world's strongest detective? The top martial arts master, the top assassin, super rich, the screenwriter's own son, and no parents. A poor second generation rich kid witnessed his parents being shot in front of him when he was a child. When he grew up, he traveled around the world and learned all the unique skills in the world. He was determined to take revenge on all criminals. From then on, he put on a cape and became the crime nemesis, the Dark Knight, Batman. In fact, it must be said that in online novels, animations, or movies, there are many protagonists from ancient times to the present who have no parents. If you ignore the dimensional wall and specially make an MTD ball to throw all the orphans in the heavens and the world, I'm afraid it will still be overcrowded. But it's rare to be able to deeply integrate the grief of losing parents into the character like Batman, and even become a part of the character's soul. Some people say that Batman is powerful because he has money and black technology. Some say it is because he is knowledgeable and talented, and some say it is because he has a superior IQ. But the fact is that Batman is essentially the child who saw his parents being shot. Because he has never been able to get out of the shadow of losing his loved ones, the boy's heart gave birth to the Avenger named Batman. After selecting the character, the first scene in the game is the Batcave. The elevator landed at the bottom with the sound of chains and metal friction. Countless bats hanging upside down in the cave were startled and flew out with flapping wings, like a dark whirlwind in the dimly lit cave. The burly man walked out of the elevator slowly. The carbon fiber reinforced bulletproof suit protected his body, and the black Kevlar custom boots made a crisp sound when stepping on the metal ladder. Batman. This opening animation immediately reminded Chu Cheng of the classic old game Batman, Arkham Origins, but the modeling and rendering were 10 times and 100 times stronger. In just a few seconds, Chu Cheng was amazed by the picture effect. Having been a Game Zone host for so many years, Chu Cheng felt that he had some understanding of the top production level of games in the industry. But even if he had played the highest quality games before, they pale in comparison to the modeling effect of this first scene. Especially when the computer in the Batcave was lit up, and the fluorescent light from the supercomputer shone into the dark cave, the light and texture in the cave, the luster reflected on the metal shell, and the Batman character who was walking to the computer and sitting down. Chu Cheng suddenly felt that this might be a real person appearing on the screen. The simulation training system has been activated. A voice came from the Batcomputer. The screen went black, and when it lit up again, the Batcave had disappeared, replaced by a huge warehouse. Batman stood on the roof of the warehouse, and his dark cape rippled in the night wind. A prompt popped up on the screen. Use WASD to control the character to move. Chu Cheng quickly understood. It was a teaching level, a process that all action games have, teaching players basic operations. Generally, the operation mode of this kind of action game is similar, and after playing one, you can guess the key positions of other games. He was also a hardcore player of the classic Batman comic book game Arkham series. He had cleared every game in the series at the highest difficulty without taking any damage, and had even edited videos. After trying it out, he found that the operation of Batman in this game seemed to be basically the same as that in the Arkham series, so there was naturally no difficulty in getting started. After getting familiar with the basic movements on the roof, the game guided him to control Batman, to open the skylight and jump down. Batman jumped into the warehouse silently and landed on a beam on the top of the warehouse, as light as a night cat. The system then prompted him to press the X key to turn on detective vision. Detective vision is a very powerful reconnaissance ability in the Batman series of games. It is a collection of a series of detection functions attached to Batman's helmet. Under the detective vision effect, Batman can see at night in the pitch black darkness, can use infrared imaging to see through walls within a certain range, can detect the enemy's heartbeat and pulse, can use the hearing amplification system to monitor conversations, and so on. Chu Cheng pressed the X key, and the color tone of the screen suddenly changed. The huge warehouse became a complete mess in Batman's eyes, with infrared imaged figures moving back and forth below. The reconnaissance results were quickly marked on one side of the screen. 7 enemies, all armed with thermal weapons. Chu Cheng, who had played the Batman series of games, quickly understood the intention of this tutorial level. Although Batman was extraordinary, his physical fitness was still that of an ordinary person. Although a bulletproof vest could resist bullets to a certain extent, it did not mean that he could go head on and force himself to be invincible in the face of a hail of bullets. Batman was essentially an assassin. He had to sneak around with the help of darkness and cover, and defeat them one by one without anyone noticing. First of all, the armed ones must be dealt with first. Chu Cheng was still very confident about this. He observed the action area of each gangster below, controlled Batman to move on the beam, found a relatively empty shadow, and jumped down. A normal person would definitely be disabled if he jumped from this height. But Batman is not a normal person. His body is the limit of human physical strength. He also has armor that can buffer impact. In addition, when he lands, his cape opens to increase wind resistance, so landing without injury is not a problem at all. Apart from the Batman series, Chu Cheng has played a lot of stealth games of this type, and he has achieved the achievement of speedrunning without injury in all of them. In addition, according to experience, the teaching levels are often very simple. It is ridiculous that a high-level player like him cannot pass them in one go. Batman. Suddenly, a minion looked over here from a distance and exclaimed, calling his teammates to come over while firing bullets at this side. Batman's bulletproof vest was hit by 2 bullets from an automatic rifle, and he fell to the ground with his head raised with a muffled groan. Chu Cheng was stunned. What the hell? Can you find it from such a distance? Aren't all NPCs in this kind of stealth game StarCraft players? Don't they all not distinguish between humans and animals beyond 5 meters? The light in this warehouse was originally dim, and Chu Cheng deliberately chose this shadow area to land. Logically speaking, Batman's pitch black equipment is not necessarily visible even in reality, right? The plan was disrupted. A prompt to throw a smoke bomb appeared on the screen. Chu Cheng immediately controlled Batman to throw a smoke bomb on the spot according to the prompt, and then immediately raised the grappling gun and fired a grappling rope at the beam in the air, pulling Batman off the ground and jumping back to the beam. At this time, Chu Cheng was still in shock. MD, this soldier is probably not 5.0 vision. Do you have detective vision? According to the experience of the series of games, generally, if you throw a smoke bomb and then quickly take off, the minions will generally not be able to find the player. Then if the player lets Batman wait patiently in the shadows for a while, those minions will soon leave the battle and return to their respective positions, as if they have forgotten about Batman. Because of this, Chu Cheng thought it should be safe, after controlling Batman, to fly onto the beam. However, he's on the roof. Another minion shouted, "Raise the muzzle," and fired another burst of bullets without saying a word. Chu Cheng. No, are all the NPCs in this game so smart? Before he could do anything, Batman was hit by another bullet. Although his custom-made batsuit can prevent bullets from penetrating his body, the kinetic energy cannot be eliminated. Therefore, Batman on the beam shook and fell directly from the roof. Then all the soldiers surrounded him and shot him. Batman fell to the ground and did not move. A big death soon appeared on the screen. The screen went black, and when it lit up, it was back to the Batcave. The electronic prompt of the Bat computer sounded again. The mission failed. The simulation has ended. The simulation program is preparing to restart. Ready. Then the start button appeared on the screen. The novice tutorial started off badly, but it did not stump Chu Cheng, but aroused his fighting spirit. Interesting, very interesting. Although it was just a simulation teaching level, the quality of this game was far beyond Chu Cheng's expectations. The simulated warehouse scene just now was like a real scene. Those minions were clearly just extras, but the modeling was incredibly delicate. The ultra-realistic scenes and the realistic character modeling and AI all gave Chu Cheng an immersive experience. It was as if he had really transformed into the Dark Knight across the screen, facing truly vicious criminals. It was a bit difficult, but that was also the charm of the game. Men all love to conquer, and the higher the mountain, the more it can arouse their desire to conquer. Chu Cheng rubbed his hands, took a deep breath, and then immediately clicked the start button. Come again. Chapter 3. This tutorial is outrageous. Death. When this bright red word appeared in the center of the screen for the nth time, Chu Cheng raised his arm and was about to punch the keyboard, but in a flash, the price of this keyboard flashed through his mind, so he held his fist back. Poverty makes people calm. He now feels more and more that this game is simply out of line. Chu, has read countless games, even some hardcore games, that players cursed as not for people to play at all. He has achieved the achievement of passing the game without injury by relying on his skills and perseverance. He has never heard of such a thing as kneeling down again and again, even in the novice tutorial. Because many details of this game are indeed different from all the games Chu Cheng has played before. Many places are so realistic that they even affect the game experience. For example, Chu Cheng's virgin kneeling. After he died several times, he concluded that it was not because the minions had an average vision of 5.0 and built-in night vision that he died that time, but because they heard a sound. That's right. If Batman lands from too high a height, the whoosh sound of the wind when he opens his cape in the air to increase air resistance and cushion his descent may attract the attention of the soldiers. In addition, the ground under your feet also needs attention. Although Batman has undergone special training and normally does not make any noise when walking, it may still make noise when stepping on certain materials. For example, it is easy to make a particularly loud sound when stepping on wooden materials. Some metal plates are loose at the joints, and stepping on them will cause the metal plates to rise and fall, which will also make a sound and attract attention. It is stronger when squatting forward, because the movement is very slow. If you squat and move slowly forward, there will be almost no sound on most materials, and it will not attract unnecessary attention. After repeatedly alarming the enemy and causing the mission to fail, Chu Cheng has completely let go of his contempt for the enemy. The Batman he controlled completely entered the night owl mode. As soon as his boots touched the ground, he would directly switch to a squatting position and walk on his knees throughout the whole process, just like an old silver coin in a shooting game. Relying on this trick, Chu Cheng successfully controlled Batman to silently approach the first armed gangster. As he pressed the right button of the mouse, Batman covered the man's mouth and nose with the force of thunder, dragged him into his cape, and strangled his neck until he suffocated and fainted. He used the same method to deal with two people and walked on his knees to approach the third person. Batman approached quickly and was about to succeed, but the gangster suddenly turned his head without any warning. The Batman controlled by Chu Cheng froze instantly. The two sides' eyes met, and the scene was very awkward for a while. "Batman!" the gangster exclaimed. At the same time, Chu Cheng controlled Batman to rush forward directly under the firepower and quickly beat him with punches and kicks, but the other gangsters had all gathered together. The gangsters were shooting and banging. Although Chu Cheng controlled Batman to temporarily escape from the battle, Batman had been shot and injured. In addition, the remaining gangsters had been alarmed and began to search everywhere, and the difficulty coefficient suddenly increased. After a struggle, he died again. He originally wanted to summarize the rules of these minions' positions in patrol routes like other games, but soon found that there was no rule at all. Every time he simulated the positions of these minions, they were completely random, and the patrol routes were not accurate at all. They basically wandered around randomly, and sometimes they would go to the next post to chat with their buddies. It is said that counter-terrorist police have never looked up since ancient times. Later, although the NPCs in the game were not CTs, most of them inherited this fine tradition. But the NPCs in this game are so outrageous. They like to look up and look around everywhere when they walk a few steps. Several times, the Batman controlled by Chu Cheng was squatting on a high place to observe the position and formulate tactics, and suddenly he was seen by some miscellaneous soldiers, and then he shouted and yelled, and then he started to shoot. Then they turned around without any rules, and it was completely unknown when they would turn their heads and look back. When controlling Batman to walk close to him from behind, if the distance was too far, the opponent might suddenly turn around and catch him. Another time, when Batman was observing from a high place, Chu Cheng used the grappling hook gun to move his position. Batman pulled out his gun and fired a grappling hook, swinging to the other end of the room. The firing sound was clearly not very loud after being silenced, but the minions under his feet still looked up at the sound and then exclaimed "Batman," followed by another round of gunfire. When the word death appeared on the screen again, Chu Cheng felt like he was beaten to pieces, and it was by the soldiers in the novice tutorial. This novice tutorial was so fucking ridiculous. How could people play the game when the hearing senses of a group of minions were like those of Lawyer Ma, Daredevil? Chu Cheng let out a long breath and saw the word death written crookedly on the screen again. He looked carefully for a long time before he saw from the gaps between the words that the whole screen was covered with a hidden big word. The character on the screen was clearly the crime buster Batman, but the tutorial made him feel like he was playing like Hello Kitty with black hair. This wouldn't do. He had to conquer this game with his dignity as the tyrant of the single player area at stake. Chu Cheng soon discovered that it wasn't that difficult. Rather than being a clumsy player, his recent defeats were caused by his unfamiliarity with the differences between the mechanics and previous games. After calming down, Chu Cheng acted more cautiously. After all, Chu Cheng was a game expert, and his basic skills were solid. As long as you remember the things you need to pay attention to in the game mechanics, it's not impossible to attack. First of all, you can't rush in rashly. Chu Cheng first lets Batman look down from a high place and observe the enemy's position in the environment and terrain before taking action. And when observing from a high place, you must hide in the shadows and use the darkness to cover yourself. Otherwise, the minions below are bored and suddenly look up, which may expose him suddenly. You must also pay attention to not moving with the grappling hook when there are enemies near your feet. Otherwise, even if there is a silencer, the sound of the grappling hook firing will still alarm the enemy. When moving on the ground, you must also hide in the dark shadows as much as possible. When you have to move outside the shadows, you must also ensure that there is no direct line of sight to this side. The perspective reconnaissance ability of detective vision is very helpful at this time. The order and route of killing the enemies according to their positions are also particular. Because once a gangster finds that a teammate has been killed, he will immediately shout and scream, and then all the gangsters will start to look around. In addition, you cannot move for a long time behind the enemy without shadows and cover, because there is a risk that the enemy may turn around at any time. Chu Cheng tries to ensure that Batman's movement time behind the enemy without cover does not exceed 2 seconds. This also involves the issue of the material under your feet. When you step on the concrete ground, that is not easy to make a sound. You can stand up and move faster, but if it is made of wood or splice metal, you have to move slowly in a stealth posture. There are many more details. Because there are too many things to do, and he is afraid that there will be omissions during the action, Chu Cheng simply found paper and pen, and listed all the things that need to be paid attention to during the period in a notebook. Before the start of each simulation, he would go through his notes from beginning to end to ensure that there were no omissions. In the end, although it took a little more time, he still managed to knock down all the enemies one by one. But the simulation was not over yet. After the 7 armed gangsters were knocked down, the door of the warehouse suddenly opened, and a burly man rushed in. The screen reminded that the next step was the fighting training program. The burly man was a fighting master, and the player needed to control Batman to fight the opponent head-on. The fighting system was not much different from the Batman series he was familiar with. Basically, only 2 buttons, attack and defense, were needed. Chu Cheng clicked the left mouse button, and Batman would automatically choose the most appropriate offensive move to launch an attack. Batman was a top master who was proficient in all martial arts schools on the earth. He could see the flaws in the opponent's movements at a glance, and choose any style of moves to attack. When the opponent had the intention to counterattack, a blue warning sign would appear above his head. At this time, Chu Cheng only needed to click the right mouse button, and Batman would automatically dismantle and counterattack the opponent's attack with the most appropriate moves. When the opponent was about to use an attack method that Batman found difficult to defend, a red warning sign would appear above his head. At this time, there is no way to defend and counterattack. The player needs to control Batman to dodge or roll to avoid the attack. The operation of many action games is roughly similar. For Chu Cheng, who has been trained for many years, this combat system is simply embedded in his DNA. Although it can be felt that the operation is more difficult than traditional Batman games, it is still a piece of cake for a player like him who has even achieved a record of no damage in the Old Man Ring. He easily got the hang of the operation and knocked down the strong man without any damage. I thought that this was almost the end, but it turned out not to be over yet. Then a few ninjas with swords and guns jumped out, and the system prompted him to control Batman to fight these ninjas at the same time. Then there was a tutorial involving the combination of various black technology props for Batman. Unexpectedly, Chu Cheng was stuck almost all day on the tutorial alone. In addition to eating, drinking water and going to the toilet, he spent the whole weekend on this tutorial. He swore that this was definitely the most outrageous novice tutorial in all the games he had played. It was not only difficult, but also very long. This was because he had a solid foundation in the game and could get started quickly. If it were someone else, he would not be able to get through the tutorial without a day or two. Mission completed. All simulations have ended. The long-awaited prompt finally sounded, and the screen returned to the Batcave. Chu Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. This time, I should finally be able to fight in real combat, right? Chapter 4. The next mission. Batman half crouched on the edge of the rooftop of the building, looking across the street at the brightly lit modern building opposite. It was a skyscraper that soared into the sky. Chu Cheng didn't know what the building was for and didn't care. He only saw a striking round bat mark above the building, which looked like the bat searchlight in the original work reflected on the clouds. This is also the same mechanism as the traditional Batman series. This mark guides players in a way that pays tribute to the original work, telling players that Batman is needed here. Like many players, Chu Cheng doesn't often care about the plot when playing the game. He just needs to know where it is, who to kill, and how many there are, and that's enough. However, after the baptism of the tutorial, Chu Cheng no longer underestimates the intelligence of the NPC in this game. The experiment of the novice tutorial has taught him that being a reckless man has no future. Charging head on with a gun at the muzzle is useless except for eating yourself. Being wretched is the kingly way. So he didn't rush in, but controlled Batman to stay on the periphery and carefully observed the situation of the building with the help of detective mode. The detective mode is still very powerful. After scanning and cooperating with Batman's personal analysis, the screen will automatically mark the entrances that can be used for infiltration in the scanned area with different colors. In the detective mode, the other backgrounds in the screen are all cold ice blue, while the marked people or objects are all warm colors, which are very eye-catching in the player's field of vision. The first thing to be marked is the main entrance of the building. There are 2 security guards guarding the door, and there are cameras in the corner. However, Chu Cheng hardly considered this option, or subconsciously regarded it as the last option, when there is really no other route. Are you kidding? Have you ever seen Batman knock on the door directly? Well, it seems that there is. Chu Cheng remembered the new Batman movie he watched not long ago. The Batman in the movie is said to be a rookie who has just debuted and is not very proficient in his business. He went to the bar run by the criminal leader Penguin to inquire about intelligence, and he really knocked on the door honestly. Batman, are you there? Have you eaten? If you haven't eaten, take my punch. So he beat up all the Penguin's bodyguards with his fists and kicks, and rushed in directly with his unparalleled skills. At that time, Chu Cheng had a strange sense of deja vu. It didn't feel like watching a Batman movie, but rather like playing Assassin's Creed. The new Batman somehow seemed to have deleted all the stealth skill trees and changed to a tank suit. The black tech armor could withstand pistols, rifles, and shotguns, and he was fine, even if he was close to the enemy and got bombed. He relied on his high health and high attack to interpret what, as long as I kill everyone who sees me, it's a perfect infiltration means. But from the novice tutorial, Chu Cheng has learned that the Batman controlled in this game is still a traditional assassin and not a tank suit, so route planning is still very important. It's better to wait until you unlock a character like Superman to experience the unparalleled frontal attack with guns and cannons in the future. Chu Cheng soon discovered that this game is different from the Batman series he played before, and it should be said that it is different from most of the games he has played because the operation is very free. It's not the kind of fake freedom that seems free, but in fact you can only take the route planned by the game, but it really allows players to choose how to act. He used detective mode to scout around the building, and Batman marked at least 7 optional infiltration routes. Chu Cheng could choose any of the 7 routes, or even choose none of them. He could also rush in through the main door, like in the new Batman movie, or kick any glass and crash in, but this would definitely be more dangerous. Thinking of the intelligence of the game's AI, Chu Cheng finally gave up the tempting idea of a berserker and chose one of the routes marked by Batman's professional vision. Batman pried open the window of a room that looked like a utility room from the outside of the building and entered the building from that utility room. After scanning the wall in detective mode, there was a camera in the corner outside the door, which was also marked by Batman in a more conspicuous color. Then Chu Cheng used the keyboard number keys to call up one of the small props carried on Batman's belt, the universal decoder. Batman in the picture squatted down and used the decoder to lock the camera outside the wall through the door. His hands in black leather gloves performed a series of operations on the holographic projection screen of the black technology decoder that made Chu Cheng I don't understand, but I'm shocked. Soon the camera was invaded and paralyzed. Of course, Batman's various outrageous black technologies have emerged in an endless stream in previous games and movie animations, and real fans are no longer surprised. Chu Cheng immediately controlled Batman to push the door and walk out, swaggering through the corridor under the paralyzed camera. Behind the corner at the end of the corridor, a security guard was walking towards this side carelessly, but he was also discovered in advance by the perspective function of the detective mode. So Chu Cheng controlled Batman to crouch at the corner and wait patiently for the security guard to approach. When the security guard approached, Batman flashed out from the corner unexpectedly. The security guard saw only a blurry black shadow flashing out, and the next second a strong big hand pressed his head and slammed it against the wall on the side. The security guard immediately fell to the ground and was motionless. Of course, it was not fatal. As we all know, Batman doesn't kill people, so players can do whatever they want in Batman games. You can control Batman to break the bones of the gangsters, press the gangsters' heads into the transformer box, and drive the tank like Batmobile to knock the gangsters all over the street. But in any case, you don't need to worry about them dying. Because Batman doesn't kill people, they can only be disabled at the first level, or become a vegetable. Anyway, they won't die. Successfully sneaked into the building. Then the detective mode marked several figures, concentrated in a room upstairs. This is also not a difficult task for the stealth master Batman. Chu Cheng felt that this was much easier than the novice tutorial. He even felt that the NPC in the first level was not as smart as the minions in the tutorial, and he didn't know if it was because he had become more skilled. Soon Chu Cheng controlled Batman to the top floor of the building. The scan in the detective mode showed that there were multiple heat sources in the office on the top floor, and a group of people gathered around a long conference table, looking like they were having a meeting. Chu Cheng still did not go through the main entrance this time, but chose the classic old friend of the Batman series, the ventilation duct. However, Chu Cheng did not expect that this game seemed to be determined to uphold the principle of high restoration, and even some unnecessary details in the ventilation duct were restored vividly. For example, the exaggerated accumulation of dust, the mold growing in the condensed water, the rodents and various insects crawling from both sides of the screen from time to time. The scene made Chu Cheng shudder a little through the screen. Sure enough, assassins, spies, and superheroes are not as glorious as they look in the movies. The ventilation ducts in movies and games are often shiny and bright, but when seeing the scene in this duct, Chu Cheng put himself in the shoes of others and tried to imagine that, if he were in it, it would probably be, as long as you don't vomit, you win. Batman is indeed not an ordinary person. He ignores the choking particles and the crawling things. Chu Cheng controlled Batman to the end of the duct, but did not rush out. Because from here, he could clearly hear what the people in the conference room were saying, which might be related to the main plot. But those people in suits and leather shoes did not speak at this time, but seemed to be doing some kind of activity. A flat-headed man with a faint smile on his face stood at the end of the conference table, with a small square box in front of him. Everyone at the conference table stood up one by one, walked to the small box, reached in and took something, and then returned to their seats. Chu Cheng activated the reconnaissance function to enter Batman's first-person perspective, zoomed in and observed clearly that each of them took out a piece of paper from the small box. They were drawing lots. The flat-headed man looked down at the paper in his hand, then raised his head and swept his eyes over everyone in the meeting. So, who is the lucky one today? A blonde man stood up at the table soon. He was a little short and fat, with a typical Western face. Chu Cheng noticed that about 2/3 of the people in this conference room had Oriental faces, and only 1/3 looked like Westerners. This seemed a bit strange in a superhero game. The flat-headed man walked up, took the paper from the blonde man, confirmed it, and then smiled, and patted him on the back. "Lucky guy, Edge," he said. Edge smiled and followed the flat-headed man to the front of the table. The flat-headed man took out a knife from under the table. Judging from the curvature and shape of the blade, it should be a samurai sword. He handed the knife to Edge solemnly. Edge held the handle of the knife in his right hand, and all eyes were focused on him. Chu Cheng felt that he would not forget the scene that happened next in the game screen for at least a week. He saw Edge swinging the knife without hesitation in a strange posture. Swish. The sound of the sharp blade cutting through flesh. Edge's head fell and landed steadily in the palm of his open left hand. Chapter 5. Honestly, even if it was a game, Chu Cheng was still a little shocked when he saw such a scene. No, I remember when it was promoted, it was clearly stated that this game was PG-13. The so-called PG-13 is actually a rating for game and film works, which means that children under the 13th of May need to be accompanied by their parents to watch the work, but generally speaking, it is a normal level without any stimulating plots. And now, looking at the headless man in the conference room below holding his chopped off head in his hand, Chu Cheng couldn't help but feel confused. He now seriously suspected that the production team had some strange misunderstandings about PG-13. Imagine a child who excitedly opened the newly bought game on the weekend and imagined becoming a superhero to save the world, but the first level was struck by lightning. Seeing such an exciting scene, I'm afraid that the young mind directly planted the foreshadowing of becoming a warrior of love in the future. What kind of children's and souls is this? But this is not even the end. I saw that the man named Edge not only stood firm after chopping off his head, but even held his head and walked forward step by step. The head in his hand was oozing out its contents, leaving a horrible trail of blood on the floor. But everyone in the conference room turned a blind eye, acting as if it was normal for someone to walk with their head in their hands. The flat-headed man stepped aside. At this time, the cabinets against the wall of the conference room actually moved, and the two cabinets separated to the sides, as if they were equipped with automatic pulleys, leaving a secret door. Behind the door was a black statue. The statue was exquisitely crafted, but its shape was distorted. It was some kind of inhuman shape, with countless arms extending from the bony body, and the twisted arms were twisted like a twist, like some kind of deformed tree trunk. Chu Cheng couldn't remember if he had seen anything with such a similar shape, but the thing that appeared in the picture made him feel very uneasy. The grotesque shape was deeply imprinted in people's minds at a glance, taking root in the deepest nightmare, making people unable to get rid of it. Edge walked to the statue and held his head with his bloody hands. What was even more terrifying was that the severed head seemed to still be conscious. It even showed a pious and almost intoxicated expression, which looked particularly gloomy and strange. The headless body held up the head. The head was quickly decomposed into a mist of flesh and blood, and was completely absorbed into the grotesque and twisted statue, as if it was affected by an invisible gravitational force. The head disappeared from the palm of the hand, and Edge's headless body suddenly softened and fell to the ground, just like a puppet whose backstage strings were suddenly cut off. The eyes of the twisted statue flashed a scarlet light. The flat-headed man took the lead, and everyone in the conference room bowed devoutly and paid the most pious respect to the statue. A burst of air-breaking sound flew over the heads of all of them. The bat-shaped black dart was nailed into the black sculpture with a thud. The flat-headed man was the first to look up in astonishment and saw that the dart was inserted into the chest and abdomen of the statue, and there was a red indicator light on it, and the dangerous light flickered. Boom. The super concentrated explosives filled in the small dart exploded, and the power blew the entire black statue into pieces. Countless fragments flew all over the ground. Who? The flat-headed man was furious. There was a sound like an engine stalling, and the lights in the conference room and the corridor outside all went out. It was a microelectromagnetic pulse, one of Batman's signature pretentious weapons. Darkness is Batman's best friend. He often uses electromagnetic pulses to paralyze all electronic equipment including surveillance and lighting before invading. The advantage of doing so is that he gains the initiative to act in the dark and spreads fear of the unknown among the enemies. The disadvantage is that it will expose his arrival in advance before he takes action. Everyone in the conference room stood up. But before they could see who the intruder was, a small spherical flash bomb rolled like a marble to the middle of the floor. Bang! A strong light exploded from the flash bomb. Before everyone in the conference room had time to adapt to the sudden darkness, their retinas were hit by a strong light as bright as daylight. Taking advantage of the moment when everyone was blinded for a short time, Batman leaped out of the ventilation duct and landed on the floor of the conference room. This operation was not a secret infiltration, but an effort to knock everyone down in the shortest possible time. Chu Cheng was finally able to let go of his hands and feet, and operated the keyboard and mouse like a storm. Batman moved like a rabbit, knocking out one person, and breaking two people in an instant. But Chu Cheng soon found that there was something wrong with these people. For example, one of them was a fat bald man. Batman twisted his arm with a joint skill. According to past experience, this soldier should have been solved. If he was let go, he should have rolled on the ground with his arm in his arms, and there was no way he would have the strength to fight again. But at this time, this guy was like a chicken blood, dragging his broken arm, and continuing to rush forward fearlessly, as if he didn't feel any pain at all. There are even more outrageous ones. For example, the flat-headed man. Chu Cheng used the skill of rapid fire batarang in the middle of the combo and tapped the number key 1 twice to control Batman to automatically throw a batarang out quickly. At that time, a danger mark appeared on the flat-headed man's head, indicating that he was ready to attack. Batman, who received the input command, threw a dart with his backhand and hit the flat-headed man's raised left hand accurately without even looking, nailing his palm into the wall behind him. The flat-headed man tried twice, but found that he couldn't pull out the bat dart that was nailing his palm, so he simply took out a dagger with his free right hand and cut off his entire left palm at the wrist without changing his expression. During this operation, he still had a blank expression on his face, like a Terminator, as if he didn't feel any pain at all. He waved the knife and ignored the bleeding severed hand and continued to rush forward. There was another guy whose leg joints were deformed and dislocated by Batman's volley kick, but he got up immediately, as if nothing had happened, and continued to attack on one foot. Brain matter, blood and a bunch of other contents were sprayed all over the carpet. The whole conference room seemed to have turned into a paradise for the devil. Chu Cheng seemed to be able to smell the disgusting stench through the screen. This is a game with a smell. This group of fearless lunatics made Chu Cheng's sanity drop wildly. He even suddenly felt that he might not have opened it in the right way. It felt like he had opened a Cthulhu game instead of a superhero theme. The Batman he played was a classic investigator. Fortunately, although they were crazy, they were not a problem in front of Batman, who had a fighting master with extreme physical strength and a bunch of black technology props. Even from another perspective, Batman had special attacks against lunatics, which was a professional match. If other superheroes were to deal with lunatics, they might not be as good as him. In just a few minutes, the lunatics in the conference room had fallen to the ground in all directions. There was only one left. The man with the flat head struggled to get up from the wall. His left hand was broken, his right arm was shattered, and his left leg was dislocated. 3 of his limbs were disabled, and even if the man's legendary third leg was counted, there were only 2 limbs left. To be honest, Chu Cheng admired him for being able to stand up. He stared at Batman with fierce eyes, as if he wanted to devour him alive with his eyes. He hopped forward on one foot, his arm drooping and dragging, and blood was still gushing out of his broken arm. The scene was quite horrifying. Chu Cheng did not raise his vigilance because of the opponent's disability. He still faced it cautiously, ready to control Batman to continue the combo. But before he could do anything, the opponent stopped. Bang! The flat-headed man's head exploded into a ball of blood. Chapter 6 Bats. Mission accomplished. Chu Cheng had to admit that he felt relieved the moment he saw this line of words appear on the screen. The sense of immersion in this game was indeed extraordinary, and it was completely different from any game he had played before. He felt that it was not only because of the realistic modeling and rendering that could be mistaken for the real thing, not only because of the extremely high degree of freedom that players had in the execution of the mission, but also because of the music, pictures and special effects. No, there were other reasons. Something that he couldn't explain, but inexplicably made him feel as if he was in the scene. But anyway, the level was over now. The game screen exited the weird conference room and switched to the settlement interface, which comprehensively settled various data such as the number of enemies Chu Cheng had solved in this mission, the fluency of the combo, the efficiency of completing the mission, and the time taken. Chu Cheng felt that his tense nerves finally relaxed. He was surprised to find that he was more nervous than he thought during the game. But now looking back, the game is still quite interesting. Batman's moves are obviously more varied than before, and Chu Cheng couldn't even see any routines in his moves. There are more auxiliary props than ever before, and a high degree of freedom in the choice of how to complete the task. Many details make him feel that this game is particularly fresh and interesting. Comic adapted games are very abstract. 9 out of 10 comic adapted games are bad. This has been the norm in the gaming industry for many years. As the saying goes, people are made of iron and rice is made of steel, but if you don't eat your feelings, you will be hungry. The significance of the birth of some comic adapted games is simply that the company does not want to see the great IP sitting in the warehouse and gathering dust and mold, but if it really wants to take it out to make an adaptation or a game, it is reluctant to spend the money. So some bad games were born, which were so bad that they were not concealed. They slapped the players in the face with their simple lines and shoddy modeling that seemed to have studied animation for 3 years, just like putting a piece of performance art with the word feelings on it into the mouth of the players and arrogantly expressed that you like it or not. However, with the emergence of representative high-quality works such as DC's Batman and Marvel's Spider-Man series, people's prejudice against comic-adapted games has been eliminated in recent years. IP adaptation in the gaming industry also seems to be developing in a healthy direction. But even so, Chu Cheng had never seen such a well-made comic-adapted game before. Even in the entire gaming circle that he was familiar with in his previous life, this should be a breakthrough. It was just that the main plot made him feel a little bit incoherent. After the first level, he still didn't understand where this building was, why Batman sneaked in here, and what was going on with all these things that made people's sanity go crazy. Chu Cheng was indeed looking forward to the following plots and levels, but he picked up his phone and looked at the time and immediately gave up the idea. Tomorrow is Monday, and he has to go to class at 8:20 in the morning. He really can't continue playing. He is now a sophomore. He is neither a freshman who has just arrived and is honest and simple, nor has he evolved into an old-fashioned person who has settled down in the dormitory and never left the house. He is in a half-baked state. From the overall perspective of the 4 years of undergraduate study, he is probably in a delicate state of getting in a little but not completely. Most of the time, he will still go to class honestly and only occasionally skip 1 or 2 classes when he feels like it. If it were any other class, it would be fine. It wouldn't be a big problem to skip it occasionally. But the problem is that the first class tomorrow morning is linear algebra, and the linear algebra teacher is the typical "I'll be dead if I don't call the roll," the kind of person who gets blown thin if he doesn't call the roll in a class. The style of this game is different from what Chu Cheng expected. He instinctively feels that it may not be that simple, but he can't tell where it is. And he was so tired after playing it. The gears in his brain seemed to be stuck and couldn't turn, and his thoughts seemed to be intermittent. So Chu Cheng calmed down, quit the game, turned off the computer, and climbed back into bed. For some reason, he felt unexpectedly tired, even though he had only played games for a whole day. He closed his eyelids, sank his head into the snow-white and soft pillow, and soon fell asleep. On the other side of the city, the cordon separated the towering skyscrapers, and soldiers in uniforms were scattered around. A black car stopped outside the cordon, and a woman walked out of the car. She strode through the cordon, and the soldiers on guard saluted as she passed by. To be fair, she has a very beautiful face, with fair skin, beautiful appearance and very good temperament. If she puts on a sophisticated suit or something, she will probably look like a female elite in the business world. But she didn't. Instead, she wore a loose black windbreaker, slender legs, and the long hem was like a dark cloak. The black combat uniform under the windbreaker refined the curves of her body, especially the tight chest area, which made her look unreserved. To be honest, it was a bit unfair to give her this face. Because if it were someone else, such a beautiful face would definitely leave a deep impression on people. But the problem is that even so, this face is far less outstanding than her figure. In comparison, her curvy figure is more memorable. The long-legged woman crossed the cordon, and the soldiers saluted her one after another. She walked into the elevator in the lobby, and went straight to the meeting room on the top floor of the building. She frowned slightly when she walked into the meeting room, thinking that there might be no worse place in the world than here. Corpses were lying on the floor of the room in all directions. Blood mixed with impurities flowed like a river, and some of them had dried and solidified. There was a pool of vomit in the corridor at the entrance, which was said to be left by the cleaner, who found the scene. When the incident happened, all the board members were in the meeting room, and no one survived. A bald man with a cigarette in his mouth walked up to her. He blew a smoke ring and said, "But they were all infected. Killed by someone?" The woman asked. "No. They were attacked by someone, but the attacker didn't kill them." The man said, "They should have been infected to a degree that exceeded their own tolerance limit, so they exploded." The woman was thoughtful. She swept her eyes across the messy room, and her sight quickly fell on the open secret door in the room and the broken stones beside the secret door. The identification department said that it should be a statue, and it is speculated that it may be the source of infection. The man said, "It should be the attacker who blew up the statue." The woman pondered for a moment and said, "So, someone did our job and completed it quite thoroughly. That should be the case. Then do we have any clues about this mysterious friend?" The bald man blew out another smoke ring, showing a helpless expression. The surveillance video was paralyzed and failed to capture the other party's whereabouts. We asked the company employees and there was only one eyewitness. But the clues he could provide were also vague. "I want to see him," the woman said. So a few minutes later, the woman came to an unlucky security guard. The security guard seemed to have been knocked unconscious before, and now there was an ice pack on his head. Before the other person finished asking questions, he spoke impatiently, as if he couldn't hold back his desire to describe his experience tonight. "I was on routine patrol when that thing suddenly jumped out. It was very fast. I was careless, and my eyes went dark and I fainted. Later, it was Zyoli who saw me in the corridor." "Oh, that's Zyoli from our security team. I woke up and heard that something serious had happened." "You just said that thing," the woman interrupted his statement. "Isn't it human?" The security guard shook his head firmly, revealing a trace of fear. "It happened too quickly, and I couldn't see it clearly, but it was definitely not human. It had very pointed ears, very large black wings, and sharp claws. Oh, and it seemed to have fangs, like the fangs of vampires in the movies. Very creepy. And it was very big. I think it should be more than 2 meters. And when it pounced on me, it looked like a bat. To be honest, I was a little scared. I have never seen such a creepy monster in my life." When the woman finished her questioning, her expression was a little worried. The bald man still had a cigarette in his mouth. It seemed that he had replaced it with a new one. "What do you think?" The woman pondered for a moment. "I have no idea." Chapter 7. The board of directors dies suddenly. Chu Cheng sat in the classroom, his hands supporting his cheeks, listlessly, yawning 5 times per minute on average. He didn't wake up until the linear algebra teacher called his name. "Are you so sleepy?" The buddy sitting next to him glanced at him. The buddy's name was Wei Futong, and he was Chu Cheng's junior high school classmate. They were not very familiar with each other in junior high school, but they didn't expect to have fate and go to the same school and the same major in college. The two chatted, played games, and went to the bathroom together from time to time, and over time they developed into buddies. Men's friendship is so simple. Although they were not in the same class, they checked each other's timetables before choosing courses this semester, and they chose the same courses. Whoever arrived in the classroom first would often save a seat for the other. "I slept a little late yesterday," Chu Cheng responded casually, and yawned again. Wei Futong looked at Chu Cheng's hand meaningfully, as if he felt that he understood. So he approached mysteriously and lowered his voice. "Do you have any resources?" "Huh. Don't play dumb. From the looks of it, the teacher last night must have had good skills, right? Can you share one with me?" "No." Seeing Wei Futong's disbelief, Chu Cheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Really not. I was playing games last night, and I didn't go to bed until very late." He told the truth. Wei Futong looked disappointed, with an expression of "oh, it's a game," and stepped aside to play with his phone. Although Wei Futong also plays games, he has no interest in single-player games. He is only interested in competitive games, especially competitive mobile games, because there are many young ladies in such games. Chu Cheng went to bed after midnight yesterday, and his dreams echoed with the shocking scenes in the plot of the game last night. To be honest, the first level after the novice tutorial of the game is really a thunderbolt at the beginning, which is really a head-sucking one, in the literal sense. With the excellent production and realistic graphics, it is indeed impressive. Chu Cheng, who has been baptized by various horror games and horror movies for a long time, has not felt this way for a long time. The last time he felt so uneasy was the classic old movie Midnight Ring. At that time, Chu Cheng had not been exposed to horror movies and had a low resistance to the supernatural. Midnight Ring left a deep shadow on his young childhood. I still remember that when I was a child, I was always scared when I saw Sister Sadako in white clothes and disheveled hair crawling out of the TV. Later, although he forgot it with time, Midnight Ring, as an enlightenment horror movie, still became a shadow of his childhood, so that he would still be afraid of the dark TV and computer screen when he turned off the lights at night. This sequel was not completely cured until a friend who was close to him recommended him a book with a tricky taste. The general plot is about Sister Sadako appearing on the TV in the home of the otaku protagonist. Unfortunately, the protagonist was a poor bastard, the TV was too small, and Sadako's secondary sexual characteristics were too developed. Tragically, she was stuck and couldn't get out. Then, half of Sadako's body was stuck in the TV, and she had some stories with the protagonist that had to be told. Since then, the door to a new world has opened in front of Chu Cheng. He was amazed that the human XP system had been upgraded to the point where even the Japanese patch could be applied. At the same time, Sadako's PTSD for many years was miraculously cured instantly, and my mother no longer worried about me having nightmares. So this kind of discomfort has not appeared in Chu Cheng for a long time. He didn't know whether it was simply because the game was well made and the pictures were too realistic or there were other reasons. Until now, the process of cutting the first level last night was still replaying in his mind, and it lingered for a long time. Fuck. Wei Futong, who was looking down at his phone, suddenly made a voice of national quintessence. Chu Cheng curiously poked his head out. What's going on? Does Clean Group know? I don't know. Chu Cheng shook his head. A company in the lower city. It seems to be a pharmaceutical company. Wei Futong said, I just saw the news. Someone said that the board of directors of Clean Group died suddenly last night. Died suddenly? Chu Cheng was stunned. It has been a month since he traveled to the Earth Pole Star. At least in this month, he felt that everything was quite normal. The memories inherited from his original body also told him that this was a safe and peaceful world. This kind of thing should be a big news. What happened? Chu Cheng asked. You can see for yourself. Wei Futong handed the phone to Chu Cheng and continued to explain in a low voice. The poster said that he is an employee of Clean Group. I heard about it when I went to the company early this morning, but the specific reason is still unknown. It is suspected that the company was attacked by unknown persons last night. Wei Futong kept talking, but Chu Cheng didn't listen to what he said later. The moment his eyes fell on the picture attached to the post, he was firmly attracted, as if he had encountered a magnet. It was a dark black building, and the surrounding area had been cordoned off by the authorities. Chu Cheng stared at the photo for a while, and at first he felt that the more he looked at it, the more familiar it looked, as if he had seen it somewhere before. After a moment, his pupils shrank, and he froze, as if he had been electrocuted. Why does this look so much like the building that Batman sneaked into in the game last night? Although it was dark in the game and daytime in the photo, and only a limited part of the building was captured in the picture, Chu Cheng controlled Batman to circle around the building for a long time last night, and he was already quite familiar with the appearance and structure of the building. He was confident that he could not make a mistake. Wait, the board members of Clean Group died suddenly last night. Chu Cheng immediately thought of the game level last night. The man in the conference room who came to see him with his head, and those crazy NPCs whose heads exploded after being knocked down by Batman. So is there this possibility? Maybe they are not NPCs? Maybe what he experienced on the computer last night was not just a virtual game process? The moment this thought came up, he felt a chill all over his body, and at the same time, the game screen from last night came to his mind again, making his back even colder. Chu Cheng also read a lot of novels in his spare time back then, and he had seen all kinds of strange external cheats after the protagonist traveled through time. He immediately thought that the game he brought from the original world was indeed wrong. Maybe he had traveled to the world set by the game. Yes. He remembered that the game loading interface last night initially showed that the map loading failed, and then the system automatically fixed the problem, and the words new map system loading completed popped up. So this new map loaded might be the map of the Earth Star. Avengers vs Justice League. A new era automatically analyzed the laws of this world and loaded the map of this world as the map background. Well, of course, Chu Cheng made it up, and he didn't know whether it was true or not. He swiped the screen of his mobile phone downwards, wanting to load more information, but a big X popped up on the screen, and a prompt: "The post you are visiting does not exist." Chu Cheng was stunned. Good guy, even the almighty river crab god followed him to another world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8, Can't Afford to Play. Blocked again. Wei Futang took his phone and swiped it a few more times, but the post had indeed disappeared like a stone sinking into the sea. "Why do you say again?" Chu Cheng asked. "Because I heard that there seemed to be more than one similar incident in the past. I saw someone in the forum saying that someone drowned in a place without water, someone got half of their body stuck in the wall, and so on, and any post similar to this would be blocked very quickly. There were such posts before, right?" Chu Cheng asked. In this information age, where the story is made up at the beginning of a picture, a few words from netizens can't really explain anything. No, to be more precise, the internet should not be blamed for this. Long before the internet became popular, all kinds of newspapers and magazines were full of strange stories. But with the popularization of mobile phone cameras, ghosts no longer come out of the mountains, UFOs no longer stroll around, and water monsters no longer bubble up. Sometimes things in this world are hard to explain. Yes, of course. Wei Futang said, but such posts would not be blocked before. Chu Cheng thought about it and felt that it was right. In the past, ghosts and aliens were all over the internet, but no one had ever checked them. Now that I saw the related posts being blocked, I felt that there was something fishy going on. If it was someone else who was just watching the fun, it would be fine, but Chu Cheng was different. After all, the clean group building in the picture on the forum was exactly the same as what he saw in the game last night, and even the news matched the game content. It was too far-fetched to say it was a coincidence. There must be something wrong. After finally getting through the get out of class, Chu Cheng was in no mood to go to class, even though he had a class later. He immediately wanted to go home and see what was going on in the game. When the bell rang, Chu Cheng asked his good brother Wei Futang to sign in for him in the next class, and then he got up and squeezed out in the crowd. Just after leaving the teaching building, before he had taken a few steps, his eyes were attracted by the scene in the square outside the door. He saw a large group of people gathered there, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, as if they were watching monkeys, and he could hear emotional scolding inside. Chu Cheng came closer, and with his nearly 1.80 meter tall height advantage, he looked inside and soon understood what was going on. Surrounding the middle were 2 young people, a man and a woman, who looked like students and were arguing passionately at the moment. "I told you, that man is just an online car hailing driver. I don't even know him. You don't understand what I'm saying, right?" The girl's mouth was as sweet as honey. "Bullshit. Now online car hailing drivers directly invite you to spend the night at your home, right? If you have such a good thing, can you do one for me too?" The boy was also aggressive. "Don't spit blood on me here. You hang out with that bunch of dubious people all day long, calling them your besties. Do you really think I'm stupid and don't know what's going on? I'm telling you the truth. I'm giving you face by not exposing you. With your ability, you're afraid of breaking, even when you pick your teeth like a stick. You're really boastful. In bed, if you can last 1 minute, you'll win. If you can last 2 minutes, you'll be considered an exceptional performance. I don't know how this person can have the nerve to do that. How can I have the nerve to do that? It's very interesting. The mileage of some cars can go around the earth. The cylinders are black, but they are still pretending to be young. What the hell are they pretending to be?" Chu Cheng probably understood after a few words. In short, a seafood merchant bumped into a steel wool merchant, and they couldn't afford to play anymore, right? This plot is also a cliché, nothing special. Aquaman's life is hanging by a thread. Don't be timid when playing. Those who understand will understand. If it were normal, Chu Cheng might still be interested in watching how the fight would end, but today he had something on his mind and was in a hurry to go back to the game, so he took a quick glance and lost interest and prepared to leave. But the next scene was beyond his expectations. Snap. A loud and crisp sound. That was the sound of the girl's slap on the boy's cheek. This sound was like the bell for the start of the fight in the fighting ring, announcing the official start of this unlimited fighting competition in the teaching building. The girl got the upper hand, but the boy's reaction was not slow, and he immediately followed up with a swinging punch, but it seemed that he did not have the desired effect. The girl's hand went back to grab the boy's hair, but she didn't expect that the hair that seemed to have not been washed for a week was too oily, and it seemed that she couldn't grab it. Oh, beautiful. In the stalemate, she used a fatal chicken beating, which was very effective. The onlookers seemed to hear the sound of something cracking. At this time, Chu Cheng had realized that something was strange. He thought that if he was hit like this, he would at least lose his ability to move for a while. Even watching him from the sidelines, he couldn't help but feel that there was a kind of pain in the world that was called pain just by looking at it. However, the boy in the field took the blow and immediately launched a counterattack as if nothing had happened. It was hard not to think that he had practiced some magical skill like the golden bell cover, and he was as stable as a mountain when standing on one leg. The boy punched the girl in the face without holding back. Half of the girl's snow white cheek immediately swelled up, and even a mouthful of blood spurted out of her mouth. But she was also completely unmoved. She used the 9-yen white bone claw to leave a bloody mark on the boy's face, and even the flesh was torn off. Chu Cheng was stunned. It was as if all of a sudden, this quarrel escalated into a life and death struggle. The two young men wrestled with each other like crazy, as if they were facing a mortal enemy. What was even more bizarre was that as the scene became more and more bloody and the scene gradually got out of control, the layers of onlookers were actually indifferent. No one stepped forward to dissuade them. No one called for help. No one even exclaimed or picked up their phones to take pictures. It was as if this was some kind of ancient arena, and these onlookers were all cold judges. Looking at the indifferent faces like machines, Chu Cheng suddenly remembered that he had seen similar expressions. It was on the faces of the men in the conference room and the game screen last night. The horrified faces in the conference room last night overlapped with the expressions of the students watching, making Chu Cheng feel a chill sweeping over his body again. He had a strong premonition that, if he continued to stay here, he might become abnormal. He had to leave quickly. Chu Cheng immediately withdrew from the crowd, stopped watching the two people fighting in the middle, turned around and withdrew from the crowd of onlookers, and prepared to leave. He had to stay away from here, and maybe he should call someone to help. Maybe he had to contact the school security department, or the public security bureau, but this kind of thing might be beyond the ability of the public security bureau. But such a thought only flashed through his mind in time. Chu Cheng turned around, and took just 2 steps, and suddenly felt a chill on his back. He turned around, and saw that the fast behind him had stopped at some point. The seafood merchant and the steel bull merchant suddenly stopped fighting, and the students who were standing in 3 layers beside them also stopped watching. They were like puppets on the stage, and the puppeteer just moved the puppet strings backstage. Then, all the puppets looked at Chu Cheng. The editor has submitted the application, but the contract card for the manuscript has not been sent out for 3 days. It's too difficult for me, CAC. Chapter 9 Special Service Division 9. Chu Cheng felt cold at the sight of all these looks. Damn, I was just passing by. Why are you staring at me? Do you think I'm too normal and don't want to go along with you? Chu Cheng didn't dare to look anymore, turned his head and wanted to run away, but found that the retreat had been blocked at some point. A student had already blocked his way behind him as if by accident, blocking his way with his body. Just when he thought things might get serious, a black van suddenly drove up. The car body drifted beautifully and stopped at the sidewalk, and the door was roughly opened along the slide rail. 2 people in black windbreakers jumped out of the car. One of them was a woman who made a deep impression at first sight. She had a unique figure that could be called 1 in a million, and her legs were all below her neck. The mere action of jumping out of the car caused an uproar. She was the type that would attract enough attention just by appearing on the street. and the other person, a bald, fierce-looking man with a cigarette in his mouth. This time, it made quite a commotion, in broad daylight and in public. The bald man blew out a smoke ring. It won't be so easy to cover it up this time, right? That's not a problem we need to consider. The long-legged woman shrugged. She took a step forward and pulled out a hard black stick from the sleeve, tied to her white thigh. She flipped the switch, and the tip of the stick sizzled, and a thread-like blue arc of electricity jumped out. An electric baton. Fortunately for Chu Cheng, as these two people appeared, those who were originally staring at him seemed to suddenly lose interest in him, and their eyes fell on these two people. Among them, the seafood merchant and the steel wool merchant who squeezed to the front of the crowd were particularly conspicuous. The two people had bruises all over their bodies. The boy's face was covered with scratches and blood, and the girl's face, which was originally pretty, was now blue and purple. It was even impossible to tell whether they were men or women, just by looking at their faces. But they all seemed to have no sense of pain, and their scarred faces were twisted and full of anger. None of them is good. None of them is good. The girl said. You are the same, right? You want to laugh at me too? The boy said. Go to hell, die, all of you. Led by these two people, everyone rushed forward. The bald man threw away his cigarette butt and waved his hand to pull out a similar electric baton. The two rushed into the crowd on the left and right. Chu Cheng quickly took the opportunity to retreat to the side. Although this development made him want to stay and watch the excitement, safety was definitely more important than curiosity. But just as he was about to run away, a soft voice sounded in his ears. Sorry to bother you. Chu Cheng turned around and found that the person who spoke was a girl with short hair, white short sleeves, and a pure and lovely appearance. She also looked like she had just got off the black van, holding a small white tablet in her hand, and her eyes were black and bright. It seemed that she should be the companion of the two people who just got off the car. Look here. The girl was holding a strange device in her hand, and the shape reminded Chu Cheng a little of the handheld barcode scanner used by the cashier at the counter. She held the thing and scanned it at Chu Cheng, then glanced at the display on the machine, and then tilted her head and stared at Chu Cheng for a while. Strange, I'm not infected at all. At this time, the bald man and the long-legged woman were already in the crowd. Their electric batons were flying, and the arcs made crackling sounds in the air. Almost every moment, crazy students fell down. Don't worry, it won't delay you for too long. The girl said to Chu Cheng very politely, it will be over soon. Chu Cheng only glanced at the battle and knew she was right. The scene of the two people waving electric batons and rushing through the crowd could not be said to be a random killing, but it could only be said that Zhao Yun entered Changbanpo and entered and exited safely. In a moment, those abnormal students had fallen all over the ground, all unconscious. After the two finished their work, they put away the electric batons and walked towards Chu Cheng. Chen Miayu, the 9th Special Service Department of the Strategic Defense Bureau. The woman showed her ID with a silver badge printed on it. 9th Special Service Division, Luo Yajin. The bald man also showed his ID, then immediately took out a new cigarette and lit it again. It was as if he had difficulty breathing without this thing. Hearing the two companions introduce themselves, the girl holding the tablet also introduced herself. Tang Li. Don't be nervous, little brother. Chen Miayu smiled gently. It's over. If it were normal, Chu Cheng might still correct him, saying that the younger brother might be a younger brother, but he was not in the mood today. At this time, the spread of the matter should be inevitable. Although no one dared to approach, when the chaos happened just now, there were teachers and students inside and outside the teaching building watching the situation from a distance, and some people took up their mobile phones to record videos. Tang Li walked up to the two of them. The infection level is below 1%. He is fine. Oh. The two people who heard this showed a look of surprise. You're a good boy. Luo Yajin patted Chu Cheng's shoulder with his rough hands. Under such circumstances, you're not infected at all. What does infection mean? Chu Cheng looked at the students lying on the ground next to him. What happened to them? I can't say. Luo Yajin said, according to the regulations, we have no right to disclose this to the general public. Chu Cheng looked at the people lying on the ground, as well as the teachers and students watching from the teaching building and the surroundings. He thought, can this lid still be covered? Mass hypnosis by summoning Wang Chun? As if he saw what he was thinking, Luo Yajin shrugged helplessly. Whether the matter can be concealed or not is not our business. Anyway, according to the rules and regulations, we can't say anything. After all, we are just humble cleaners. Oh, but the infection level of these students in your school is not high. The situation is relatively minor. It's just a small-scale mild infection accident. It's no big deal. They will be fine. Chu Cheng thought of the scene of the group of demons dancing wildly just now, and thought, is this still considered mild? Then what is considered serious? Then he thought of what he saw in the game last night, the inhuman operation of the man who chopped off his own head with a knife. Well, he seemed to have guessed it a little. Then, at the request of the two, as the only eyewitness who was still awake at the scene, Chu Cheng repeated what he saw in detail. The girl named Tang Li carefully recorded the whole process on the tablet with a sensor pen. While talking, another car soon arrived at the scene. A team of soldiers in black uniforms jumped out of the car, set up a cordon, and began to clean up the scene. Okay, that's about all I want to ask. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Tang Li carefully put away the pen. Finally, there is one more thing. I may trouble you to do a physical examination within today. Don't worry too much. You passed the scan just now, so there should be no problem. You should not be infected. The physical examination is just to be on the safe side. Go to the city center hospital at any time today. With the certificate number, they will arrange a special full set of examinations for you, free of charge. In fact, when it comes to physical examinations, Chu Cheng refused in his heart. He is often not friendly to physical examinations of young people in the new era. Chu Cheng still remembers that when he was a kid, the things he hated most were blood draws and vision tests. Back then, he was ignorant, and in the spirit of human idleness, he memorized the entire eye chart, deceiving himself that his vision would take off. But he didn't expect that the doctor took a glass stick and he couldn't see the stick clearly. Although he didn't know what the infection meant by these people, he still felt a little scared when he thought of the students just now. He felt more at ease to undergo a full body examination. This might be the most comprehensive physical examination he had ever received in his life. He didn't even eat lunch. After taking a car to the hospital to undergo a complete physical examination process, it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. After having dinner outside, it was almost 5 o'clock when he got home. The first thing Chu Cheng did after returning home was to turn on the computer and log into the Avengers vs Justice League, a new era again. When the game started, and the ER and JL signs facing each other appeared on the screen again, he felt that his tense nerves finally relaxed a little. Chapter 10 C-Class Teleportation Array. After logging into the game and entering the main interface, he carefully studied the following options. In addition to the start game option, there are also store and settings options below. In the settings option, you can customize the game volume, screen brightness, control keys and other details. These are all regular options and nothing special. The store is more noteworthy. In fact, Chu Cheng had seen the store when he first played the game yesterday, but when he entered yesterday, it was still empty. When he entered again today, there were some changes. First of all, his own character's column was empty when he first entered yesterday, but now there is a Batman avatar. When you select Batman with a mouse, there is also a small introduction. Batman, real identity Bruce Wayne, a billionaire from Gotham City. After witnessing his parents being shot in his childhood, he was determined to prevent such incidents from happening again. After traveling around the world and undergoing rigorous training, he returned to Gotham and became Gotham's Dark Knight Batman. In addition, a new option was unlocked in the store. Sea-level teleportation array. Hero points can be consumed to activate the teleportation array. Each time, a superhero or hero's equipment will be randomly summoned from another world. Each activation of the teleportation array requires 50 hero points. Chu Cheng understood immediately. Isn't this the card drawing mechanism of mobile games? The upper right corner of the store interface shows the player's current remaining hero points, just over 500, which can barely draw 10 times. This is the reward for completing the first mission last night. Classic noobers get 10 consecutive draws. I don't know who started the bad trend. It's as if all kinds of card drawing mobile games are flying all over the sky overnight. Game manufacturers seem to have finally found the code to wealth after years of exploration. There is no need for gorgeous game graphics or much capital investment. Anyway, as long as the girl character's portrait is painted white and big, it's done. Players seem to be cursing and shouting that it's nothing special, but in fact, they still have to lead the charge when the new portrait is released. They rush so fast and fiercely that even the Flash has to admit defeat. Some people think it's ridiculous that this kind of game can become popular, but Chu Cheng thinks it's natural. If a brothel and a casino are open together, it would be a miracle if it doesn't become popular. I just didn't expect that Marvel and DC, the two big-eyed and thick-browed ones, would also try this trick. However, the gambling element can be copied, but the coloring is different. After all, it is a superhero theme, so it should be impossible. Bang! There was a flash of white light on the screen, and the teleportation array made a roar of engine running. A beautiful figure appeared between the teleportation arrays, with a curvy figure, a purple black mask, long boots, and snow white long legs. The two overdeveloped white lumps on the chest squeezed out a ravine comparable to the Mariana Trench. Chu Cheng. Well, it seems that he may have underestimated these two big-eyed and thick-browed ones. They have known about coloring since the last century, and they don't need to be taught at all. Hero introduction. Huntress, formerly known as Helena Bertinelli, daughter of the Gotham Mafia boss. Proficient in fighting, gun shooting, vehicle riding, and her signature weapons are crossbows and long sticks. The new hero was a pleasant surprise at first, but the surprise came and went quickly, just like the time of the sage after the phase rush. After calming down, Chu Cheng quickly thought about and analyzed the pros and cons of the role. Although the element of drawing cards to change heroes has been added, the game format itself is still an action-adventure game. Players can only operate one game character at a time to carry out activities, so the release of new heroes only means that there are more characters for players to choose from. So this newly released new hero suddenly seemed useless, because the positioning of the Huntress was repeated with Batman. The Huntress is also a mortal hero without superpowers, but Batman is basically the ceiling in this type of hero. She is good at fighting, but not as good as Batman. She is good at shooting, but still not as good as Batman. And of course she is even less likely to be better than Batman in terms of equipment and props. There is basically no advantage, except that her breasts and long legs are pleasing to the eye. Judging from the panel description below, if we must say where there is a striking difference. Vehicle riding? So does this riding have a vehicle range limit? As an upright and serious hardcore player, Chu Cheng certainly doesn't have any extra thoughts. He is just curious. This vehicle package does not include the player himself. Crossed out, if he just played the game and got such a delicate and powerful hero, he might feel that he made a profit, but now he has guessed that this may not be just a game. Then it must be a loss to release a new hero that has the same positioning as Batman and is comprehensively low profile. After drawing one shot and there are still 9 shots left, Chu Cheng took a deep breath and continued. Thank you for participating. Thank you for participating. Thank you. Chu Cheng realized that maybe the hero delivery rate is not that high. He may be lucky to get the Huntress in the first shot. Thank you for participating in 7 shots in a row. Chu Cheng almost suspected that his African bloodline was starting to stir, but then he thought about it, and it was not right. There is a saying that Krypton cannot change fate and Zuan cannot save non-Africans. Don't blame Africa for your bad luck. The real king of Africa can get whatever he wants, even draw cards, and Africa is not to blame. The last round finally produced something. What is the thing that was shipped? Green arrows, I ask. Chu Cheng. So what is the use of this thing? The introduction is also very simple, just saying that it is an eye mask made of special fibers, which can conceal the identity without affecting vision and movement. To be honest, Chu Cheng even doubted whether this thing can conceal the identity. I still remember that the protagonist in the Green Lantern movie also wore an eye mask similar to this, and ran to the roof to pick up girls. As a result, the heroine exposed his identity at a glance and ruthlessly complained, saying that I can recognize you even with your naked butt, and you want to hide your identity by covering your cheekbones. Are you blind or mentally retarded? But Chu Cheng is still curious. No matter how you look at this thing, it is a game equipment. Maybe it can add some attributes or something. But shipping is profitable, and you should not miss free things. Chu Cheng saw a summon button under the delivery item. He thought for a moment, and clicked the summon button. The next moment, he saw the small green eye mask enter the backpack in the game. At the same second, Chu Cheng's phone rang. Chu Cheng picked up the phone, and found that he had received a text message from an unknown number. Your package has been delivered to the door. Please check it, as soon as possible. Chu Cheng was stunned. Package? What package? Which door? Then his eyes quickly fell on the small green eye mask in the backpack on the game screen. Could it be? He was amazed at the absurd idea that came to his mind. But even so, he immediately got up, walked through the living room, and opened the security door. He saw a small package lying quietly in the corridor outside the door. Chapter 11 Interdimensional Package. Chu Cheng returned to the room and used a paper cutter to open the sealed package. But when he opened the package and saw the green eye mask that was exactly the same as the one in the game lying in front of him, he was silent for a moment. It was not an illusion, it was real. He stretched out his nervous hands and picked up the small eye mask. It was a material he had never seen before, cold and soft, and it felt very comfortable to the touch. He tried to put on the eye mask. I don't know what technology was used, but this small eye mask did not need to be bound by ropes or any mechanisms, and it fit tightly on his skin directly, and the size was so suitable that it seemed to be tailor-made for him. Just as described in the game, wearing it does not affect vision and movement at all, and if you don't pay attention, you may even ignore its existence. Chu Cheng took off the eye mask and stared at the opened empty package. It was really weird. Just such a beautifully packaged package, without a sender's address or a consignee's address, without any information, fell to the corridor outside the door almost the moment he clicked the mouse to buy it on the computer. What is this? Cross-dimensional express delivery? Or is it that the order is placed and the goods arrive in seconds? This delivery efficiency is really so fast that SF Express shed tears, ZTO Express was silent, and the speed reached all the worlds. But at least this proves one thing. This game can indeed affect the reality he is in now. Green Arrow, because the code name of the superhero overlaps with a well-known chewing gum brand, is called Tangje. His image design pays tribute to Robin Hood, and he is positioned as a shooter with a specialty of melee combat, and he is a master of archery. As for Tangje's equipment, his bow and arrow and black technology arrows may be useful, but Chu Cheng really can't think of what a broken eye mask is useful for. However, although Tangje's eye mask is useless this time, if we think about it, is there a chance that other superhero equipment will be shipped from this summoning array system, including other equipment that is much more useful than the eye mask? For example, Batman's dart hook gun and uniform, Spider-Man's web launcher, and even Iron Man's armor? If all of that can be embodied in reality, it will be directly transformed into extraordinary powers that can be used in reality. Chu Cheng sat back in front of the computer, and his expression became more complicated when he looked at the game running on the screen. He entered the simulation training module again, but this time Chu Cheng's mentality was different from before. If yesterday's tutorial was just for the sake of the tutorial, then today's is purely for learning and training. Familiarity with the fighting system, the use of stealth tactics, and the use of various props. All of a sudden, these are not just game techniques for Chu Cheng, but real abilities, extraordinary abilities that he needs to learn and master and can use proficiently. Games are Chu Cheng's specialty, and he has never been so serious about any game in his life. His game skills have also improved rapidly in a day. He found that, although the operating details of this game are more difficult than the previous Batman series, once you are familiar with it, the operating performance is also superior. As long as you are familiar enough, players can almost become Batman himself with the medium of keyboard and mouse. A day was spent in the simulation, and night finally fell. Select Batman in the hero selection interface, and go out directly. After a brief black screen, when the screen came back on, Batman had already landed in the city under the night sky. He half crouched in the brightly lit city, his cape rising and falling under the bright moonlight. Chu Cheng recognized at a glance that it was opposite the clean group building that had been offline last night. He controlled Batman to walk to the edge of the rooftop, moved the mouse to adjust to a bird's eye view, and could even see the cordon at the bottom of the building and the personnel standing guard at the cordon. From this angle, he could even imagine the direction and angle from which the photo he saw in the forum during the day was taken. After going online, the game first reminded him that the tutorial and the first mission had been completed. The map function has been unlocked, and players can control Batman to explore the city freely. Chu Cheng pressed the M key on the keyboard, and the city map immediately opened on the screen. It was the map of Jiangdu where Chu Cheng lived. He used the mouse to move the view on the map, and even found his current location from the map. Chu Cheng suddenly had an idea. Can I find myself in this game? Although this city is called Jiangdu like the city he lived in before he crossed over, they are not exactly the same. Some streets and some areas are exactly the same as the Jiangdu in his previous life, including the area where his uncle's home is located, but there are also many places that are different. Apart from other things, first of all, the current Jiangdu is more than 3 times larger than the city in Chu Cheng's previous life. And as mentioned before, there is no concept of national boundaries on the Earth star. Any city may be inhabited by people with the appearance characteristics of various countries and regions on the original planet D at the same time, but people in the same city will spontaneously form different living circles according to their race and living habits. Chu Cheng is old and has a poor sense of direction when playing games. When he was broadcasting a game of Black Soul, he was mocked by the barrage every day, saying that the biggest obstacle for some people to spread the fire is hand disability, but the anchor is not. His biggest obstacle is getting lost. There is a saying that all roads lead to Rome, but it does not exist for him. He only thinks that all roads are mazes. This world may have east, south, west, north, and north for some people, but it does not exist for him. In his eyes, there are only front, back, left and right. Fortunately, this game is user-friendly and provides the traditional idiot-style navigation function. Just type in a coordinate on the map, and anyone who is not blind can get to the destination. Chu Cheng marked the coordinate on the map. Then he exited the map, and a small round bad mark immediately appeared on the screen, and the real-time navigation reminded the player where the route target was. Batman's grappling gun has a load-bearing capacity of more than 500 kilograms, and the cape behind him is not a decoration. It is usually made of cloth-like material, but once it is powered on, it can be molded into a solid glider, which can help him glide in the sky. The combination of these two pieces of equipment makes him walk on flat ground in the jungle of reinforced concrete. Chu Cheng can feel the pleasure of flying over the eaves and walls through the screen, especially when the Batman in the picture came to the area familiar to Chu Cheng, leaping over his school, the neighborhood he walked in, and the business district he visited. He felt more and more unreal. Of course, he did not forget to avoid unnecessary sight and surveillance cameras during the period. Batman's black battlesuit designed for covert operations made it much easier to hide. Coupled with the perspective plugin of the detective mode and the black technology decoder that can invade any surveillance camera, it is not difficult to avoid being seen. Seeing Batman in the screen getting closer and closer to the navigation location, Chu Cheng found that his heartbeat was gradually accelerating. He was not sure if he was mentally prepared for what he was going to see next. Finally, when a grappling hook was fired, Batman flew into the air under the ejection of the grappling hook gun, opened his cape, and glided and sprinted handsomely, landing on the roof of a residential building. Chu Cheng pressed the X key to activate the detective mode, and the screen entered the first-person perspective under Batman's helmet. The picture quickly enlarged as he scrolled the mouse wheel, and finally locked onto a lighted window of the residential building opposite. In the highly magnified picture of the detective mode, Chu Cheng saw himself through that window. That was his room. Chu Cheng took a deep breath. He stood up from his chair, walked to the window, and looked at the roof of the opposite building through the window. Then he saw the Dark Knight standing under the moonlight, his cape fluttering like a flag in the night wind. Chapter 12 Night Watch. Chu Cheng stood by the window, looking across the street at Batman with his cape flying on the roof opposite, and for a moment he could not help but feel a sense of unreality. At this point, there was no longer any doubt. Somehow, all the heroes he controlled in this game would be reflected in reality. Those legendary superheroes were like his agents, his avatars, who could do things for him that he could not do. Now he could only control Batman, but more new heroes might be unlocked later. For example, Spider-Man, Iron Man, or even Green Lantern, Doctor Strange, Superman and other wall-hanging characters. But at this time, he immediately realized one thing. That is, if it is not necessary, he'd better keep the hero he controls as far away from him as possible. There are similar plots in the original DC and Marvel comics. For example, Spider-Man always hangs around the school he attends, and people guess that he may be a teacher or student in the school. For example, there is black technology that can track Superman's flight trajectory on the map. The perverted rich man was bored and spent a lot of money to draw Superman's daily flight curve and found that this guy always hangs around the Daily Planet. With the lessons learned from these comic book predecessors, Chu Cheng immediately realized that he should keep the hero he controlled away from here. What if someday in the future there is a local tyrant chasing after superheroes and drawing curves all over the world, and then he is surprised to find that all kinds of heroes love to wander around in this small piece of land? Then he will be exposed. As long as he hides well and stays behind the scenes, all kinds of heroes from Marvel and DC will become his powerful thugs and become the foundation for him to settle down and build a career in this strange world. Maybe it can develop into a super powerful evil force and he can be the leader behind the scenes. Thinking of this, he sat back in front of the computer, controlled Batman and turned away. While walking through the night, his thoughts did not stop. Yesterday he was impressed by the freedom of this game, but now he feels that it is a bit too free. Not to mention that the game hardly gives any guidance. There is not even something like a main task, and it is not known what this game wants players to do. In fact, if you think about it carefully, even the first task completed online yesterday cannot be accurately called a task. The game didn't give a clear concept of missions at all. It just put a bad mark on the roof of the clean group to remind players that there might be something wrong there. But Chu Cheng thought that if he ignored this mark and controlled Batman to go shopping in the city, it would not be impossible. He felt like he really opened a Batman simulator, doing whatever he wanted and going wherever he wanted. There were no missions or main lines, and the plot unfolded entirely by himself. Just as he was thinking about what the game needed to do, a small exclamation mark suddenly appeared on the game screen. Just like the GPS positioning updated the destination location, and the location was not far from Batman. Is this a mission? Chu Cheng's mind moved, so he controlled Batman to move in the direction of the exclamation mark. Xiao Fang felt that today was definitely his unlucky day. In the morning, the alarm clock didn't ring and he overslept. He hurriedly rode his electric scooter all the way to the company with sparks and lightning. He didn't even have breakfast and was still 5 minutes late. It was late, and he happened to bump into the boss in the elevator. The boss scolded him without saying a word. After finishing the work, I went to the meeting and found that I was in a hurry to go out. I forgot the materials I rushed out last night on the table. The manager asked about my household registration book on the spot. I originally wanted to go out with my 2 girlfriends to have a good meal in the evening to change my mood, but this person is unlucky. He can fall on the ground when walking, his teeth get stuck when drinking cold water, and his queue is crooked. When she was walking on the road, she met a group of lazy street urchins who surrounded her and chatted with her. She ignored them and quickened her pace to leave, but she didn't expect that the man would pull her back. Don't be ungrateful. Let go. Xiao Fang slapped the other person's hand away, but she didn't expect that one of the thorny men would punch her in the face. This punch made her see stars, and she was a little confused. Shame on you? The thorny man cursed. Although there were not many people on the road, pedestrians were stunned by the arrogance of this group of people. Many people stopped, but no one dared to step forward to stop them. Someone behind him took out a cell phone and seemed to want to call the police, but the blonde boy who was accompanying the man snatched the phone and smashed it on the concrete floor. You like to show off, don't you? The blonde boy slapped the man in the face. Xiao Fang fell to the ground. Half of her cheek was burning, and it felt like there were thousands of flies flying around in her head. She waved her hands and tried to stand up, but was pushed back to the ground. The group of people stood in a circle around her, and she smelled a strong smell of alcohol. The man was still shouting something vaguely, but the tinnitus made her unable to hear anything clearly. She gave up the intention to get up and could only try to protect her body. She imagined that this was just an unrealistic nightmare, and maybe at some point she would wake up in a cold sweat and find herself still lying in the warm bedding, and this unlucky day had not even started. The thorny man cursed and swung his fist again, pretending to swing it down. Snap! The lights went out. Not only the street lights, but also the lights in the buildings on the street and the hanging electronic advertising signs. It was as if an invisible hand cut off the light source and dragged everything into the eternal silent darkness. Everyone was shocked by this sudden change. The man also retracted his fist that was about to fall and frowned. "What are you doing?" The spherical object drew a parabola and was thrown at their feet, exploding with a slight sound. The smoke screen and the darkness quickly dominated the entire venue. A shadow spread its dark wings, like a demon falling from the sky, and fell into the flying smoke screen. The thorny man didn't see anything clearly. He only vaguely saw a black shadow flashing in front of him, and the next moment his nose was broken with a click. The severe pain came like a tide, and he let out a pig-killing howl, and he was mostly sober. "Brother." The companion next to him waved his hand to disperse the smoke screen and tried to get closer to the sound, but he felt his arm sink after taking 2 steps, as if it was clamped by something. He had no time to struggle, and the pain almost made him faint with the sound of dislocated bones. The darkness and smoke made their eyesight directly scrapped. No one knew what happened, only the screams of their companions sounded one after another in the smoke, as if woven into a symphony of despair. The thorny man recovered from the severe pain of a broken nose, raised his head with unstoppable nosebleed, and then froze in place in an instant. He was not afraid of injury, nor was he particularly afraid of death. In fact, it was common for people like him to get bruised and battered in a fight. He was the kind of person who had nothing to worry about, and fear was a very distant word for him. After all, a person doesn't care about death. What else is there to be afraid of? Until today, he realized that he was wrong. He saw the vague shadow in the smoke, and his mind automatically completed it into a hideous and terrifying image. The huge black wings, the blood-sucking fangs, and the claws that seemed to be born for killing, are things you might only see in your deepest nightmares. Then he saw that thing coming towards him again. He froze, like a bewildered elementary school student. He stared with wide eyes in horror, watching the bat-like monster cut through the smoke and quickly approach him, feeling his heart almost bursting out of his chest, and the great fear made him unable to move. The punch on the cheek made him spit out a mouthful of blood, which might have been mixed with a few teeth. The next punch made him feel that 2 or 3 ribs were broken. The next one was especially fierce, and the shock of severe pain spread all over his body from the lower body. That thing might have been completely necrotic. The last one was a straight kick that almost made his heart and lungs stop. The thorny-headed man flew out of the smoke, flew across the street, and fell on the opposite sidewalk, causing passers-by to scream when he landed. At this moment, he felt like a fragile porcelain, which was broken into pieces by this blow. The blood poured into his throat, and he almost choked to death on his own blood. The smoke dissipated, and all the lights suddenly lit up again. Xiao Fang panted, sat up on the ground, and looked around blankly. She saw a group of street urchins lying on the ground. The thorny man who led the group had already flown to the opposite street, his face covered in blood, and it was unclear whether he was dead or alive. The onlookers were all far away in confusion. There was no one on this side of the street except her. She felt a little dizzy and couldn't digest what she saw. What just happened? Chapter 13, The Game of Hollowing Out the Body. After a wave of heroes rescued the beauty, they pretended to be cool and ran away. They waved their capes without taking away a cloud. To be honest, Chu Cheng thought he was very handsome. In the past, he actually liked to play those open map superhero games. The most representative ones are DC's Batman and Marvel's Spider-Man. Many games in these 2 series feature that you can control the superhero protagonist to roam freely in the city. You can choose to follow the main storyline to push the plot, or you can choose to walk around. If you see a fire, go to put it out. If you see a robbery, go to rescue people. Experience a real superhero daily simulator. Of course, no matter how real it is not as real as the one he is playing now. It is so real that it is really real. Chu Cheng has seen a lot of injustice in his previous life. Every time he sees an unjust incident while surfing the internet, he will be indignant like everyone else, but it is useless. But to be honest, if the incident really happened in front of him, Chu Cheng estimated that he would probably stay out of it and pretend not to see it. Most people are the same. They just think about being a hero in their hearts, and at best they will criticize the person online. Few people have the courage to fight for justice. But now it is different. Now he has the power. As the saying goes, I'm submissive in reality, but I strike hard online. When I see injustice, I just press the button, and with a series of operations, justice is enforced across the screen. In addition, it is well known that some words and things have completely different effects when said and done by different people. For example, a simple no may sound like brother G, don't to some people, but it sounds like a 1-on-3 game in the landlord's hand to others. The same is true for punishing evil and promoting good. It is a specialization. If Chu Cheng had acquired Batman's physical strength and skills and went up to beat up the street urchin, although the urchin was beaten down, he might still be shaking fiercely, and he might even be calculating where this guy came from, and he would go back to investigate and even take away his household registration book. But Batman is different. This big bat with a height of 1.88 meters and fangs and claws, with a villain face, smashed, looted, burned, broke into houses and fought, and did almost all kinds of evil things except killing people. The evil leader dared not kill him when he saw him, and he had nightmares about bats more frequently than when he was a child. The most important point is that Chu Cheng can stay out of it while doing all this. After all, Batman is doing things outside. What does it have to do with me, Chu? In addition, Chu Cheng also has benefits. After beating people this time, the game settled for 12 hero points, of which 7 points were for knocking down a total of 7 enemies, and the remaining 5 points were awarded for him that Batman was not seen by anyone during the action, which is an additional point. After the smoke bomb was thrown, Chu Cheng basically just kept pressing the left mouse button mindlessly. Batman's combo knocked them all down. The defense and counterattack mechanism was not triggered at all during the whole process, which means that these 7 people didn't even have a counterattack that could hit Batman. Well, this is normal. After all, Batman was forcibly labeled as an ordinary human by the screenwriter, but viewers who know a little bit know that Master Bat has already broken through the ceiling of the normal human category. It would be strange if ordinary gangsters could compete with him. In this way, Chu Cheng roughly understood the mechanism of this game. In short, it is to manipulate superheroes to kill monsters and earn points, and then you can unlock new heroes or draw hero equipment. However, Chu Cheng thought that if you really have to rely on patrolling every night to uphold justice like anime superheroes to earn points and upgrade, then the efficiency is too low. Where do so many laws and regulations come from in reality? It's not like everywhere is as simple and honest as Gotham. The reason why the original Batman leveled up so fast should be closely related to the feng shui of Gotham. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there were madmen who wanted to blow up the city hall. On Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, the whole city was either poisoned or nuked. On Sunday, he went on a business trip with the Justice League to fight aliens and monsters for a change of taste, and then came back next week to continue. Batman's life is so plain and boring. With such high intensity landing all day long, it would be strange if he couldn't level up. But Chu Cheng thought that he was not in Gotham, so how could he level up when there were no madmen or criminals to play? Helping old ladies cross the road and saving cats in trees? No, that seems to be Superman's job. Chu Cheng thought so at first, but he soon found that the actual situation seemed to be different from what he thought. He controlled Batman to wander around the city for a night and really encountered a lot of things that needed his help. For example, someone robbed a jewelry store in the dark of night, followed a JK girl late at night, and was caught stealing an electric bike, and had a real-life park. Chu Cheng realized that this other world was not as peaceful as he had thought before. It seemed that the emotions of the people here were particularly easy to be triggered. Gentlemen would fight directly at the slightest friction. It was not until after 1 o'clock in the morning that Chu Cheng was so sleepy and tired that he could not stand it anymore. he had to turn off the game and fell on the bed. It was strange to say that he felt his body was hollow after playing games these 2 days. He was just sitting in front of the computer and typing on the keyboard, but he seemed extremely tired, exhausted. He turned off the computer and fell into the soft bed without even taking off his clothes. He fell asleep almost as soon as he closed his eyes. This sleep was indeed sound, and when he woke up, the sun was shining brightly. He stretched his arm out of the quilt in a daze and grabbed his mobile phone to see that it was 11:30. All the classes in the morning had been automatically passed. Chu Cheng realized that he had been playing games since he came back yesterday. He was exhausted after playing games and didn't even look at his phone all night. It turned out that all the groups of his classmates had exploded yesterday and they were discussing the accident during the day. Wei Fu Tang even sent several messages asking if others were still alive and if they were affected. Chu Cheng replied to the message to tell his good brother that he was fine, then stretched and got up to wash up. It would not have been a big deal if he didn't get up, but as soon as his feet touched the ground, he felt sore all over and almost couldn't stand. His muscles were sore, as if he had been fighting against the muscular man all day yesterday. He almost died when he got out of bed. But the strange thing is that, although there is no conclusive evidence, after sleeping for a while and replenishing his energy, he felt that he seemed to have more energy than before, and his physical condition was unprecedentedly excellent. Even his kidneys were stronger than before. But he clearly didn't do any strenuous exercise yesterday. So Chu Cheng immediately thought of playing games all night yesterday. Is it possible that when he controls Batman to fly over the eaves and walls outside, he will consume his own physical energy to a certain extent? No, it feels like it is not only consuming physical energy, but also that his body seems to have been strengthened to a certain extent. Of course, it is impossible for all exercise consumption to be restored 1-to-1, and Chu Cheng himself has a number in his mind. Because if Batman's exercise consumption is really fed back to the player 1-to-1, with his standard otaku's physical fitness suddenly exercising at such a high intensity for a whole night, I'm afraid he can be carried away now. He soon realized that this consumption feedback has both advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages that he can't control Batman to go out and kill people from morning to night without limit because there is a risk of being drained. And he has reason to guess that perhaps as the superhero abilities unlocked later become more and more supermodal, the burden of controlling those heroes may be greater. The advantages that he has vaguely felt a significant improvement in physical fitness in just one night. This is absolutely unimaginable by any conventional training method. With this mechanism, as long as he sits in front of the computer every day without leaving the house, his physical fitness will be rapidly improved, and it can also lay a good foundation for controlling stronger heroes in the future. Gradually getting used to the sore muscles, Chu Cheng got up and went to the bathroom to wash up. Just after applying toothpaste, the melodious doorbell rang throughout the room. Chu Cheng was stunned, put down the toothpaste and toothbrush, walked to the door, and leaned over the cat's side to look out. Damn, such round legs. Oh no, it's such long breasts. It doesn't seem right either. He opened the door, and standing outside the door was the smiling Secret Service agent Sister Chen Miayu who he had just met yesterday. Hello, little brother. She smiled and waved. See you again. Chapter 14 The Infected. Seeing Chen Miayu appear at the door, Chu Cheng's first reaction was that something was wrong. Could it be that his remote control of a rich second generation from another world with a transvestite to fly around in the middle of the night was exposed? But on second thought, he felt that it shouldn't be the case. After all, a game geek remotely controlling a superhero from another world to go out and hang out is too abstract, and it shouldn't be possible for ordinary people to think of it. The greater possibility is that the other party is still here to investigate the sudden accident in the school yesterday. But soon he will find that he guessed right, but not completely right. Come in and sit down. Chu Cheng asked politely and swallowed the second half of the sentence. My house is quite big. No, I'm working. Chen Miayu chuckled. Wait until I have a day off and come to your house to sit down, little brother, but not today. Then today is. Our team just finished some things and was about to go back to the headquarters. We just happened to pass by here. Chen Miao explained. The higher-ups said that they have something to talk to you about, so they asked us to pick you up to the headquarters. Is it convenient for you now? Did their superiors specifically ask for them? This was unexpected. Chu Cheng thought that if he really wanted to investigate and collect evidence, there would be no need for the leader to step in, right? Was there anything special about him? Okay. Chu Cheng thought for a moment and replied, then I'll go change my clothes first. He went back to his room to change his clothes, and soon went out, and followed Chen Miao downstairs. The black van had already stopped at the bottom of the building, and the bald agent Luo Yajin from yesterday was leaning against the car and smoking. When he saw Chu Cheng, he grinned. See you again. He handed Chu Cheng a cigarette. Want one? Thank you, but I don't smoke. Chu Cheng waved his hand to refuse. Ah, you're welcome. There may be more opportunities to deal with each other in the future. Thank you, but I really don't smoke. Chu Cheng refused again, and at the same time, wondered if this had other meanings. But when he raised the question, Luo Yajin and Chen Miao had no intention of explaining. They just smiled, then opened the car door, and took him in. The innocent logistics girl Tang Li was also in the car. She still held the tablet in her small hands, and when Chu Cheng got in the car, she raised her head and greeted him politely. To be honest, Tang Li's appearance was still very good. If she were to be in the campus where Chu Cheng was studying, she would definitely be a school beauty. However, as the saying goes, there is no harm without comparison. But in fact, it is not that the appearance cannot be beaten. After all, everyone has their own preferences when it comes to appearance, and it is difficult to say that any judge is fair. But unfortunately, Chen Miao is an A-level strongman, and Tang Li's strength is at most a peak of A-level and half a step to B-level. There is a difference of several levels. Oh, no, there is a difference of several realms. Since ancient times, heroes love high mountains, and it is unheard of that a horse treads on plains. This one is really unbeatable, and there is no way to deal with the realm gap. After Chu Cheng sat down in the back seat, the car started. Luo Yajin sat in the passenger seat and hummed a little song, while Tang Li waved the sensor pen seriously to write and draw on her tablet. Chen Miao was looking through the documents with her long white legs lifted up. Wait a minute, who is driving the car? Chu Cheng only noticed the young man driving the car at this moment. With his messy black hair, pale face as if he was malnourished, and dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't woken up yet, Chu Cheng suddenly wondered if it was a bad idea to get in this man's car. The man seemed to notice that Chu Cheng was looking at him and raised his eyelids as a greeting. Junpei Kategora, a Japanese name? Of course, Chu Cheng was just thinking so. This world has no national boundaries, and it's not strange to see names with characteristics of any country in the original world around you. However, the young man muttered this as a self-introduction, and then stopped talking, continuing to shut up and concentrate on driving. Let me teach you some basic knowledge first. Chen Miao threw the stack of documents aside and sat opposite Chu Cheng. You must still be curious about what happened in your school yesterday, she said. To be honest, your classmates were infected. Infected? Chu Cheng was stunned. What kind of virus? Not the kind that people generally understand. Chen Miao shook her head. No one knows where the specific source is, but from one day on, the world suddenly stepped into a track of being out of control. Some unknown ancient existence is awakening, and will use various media in various forms that are hard to guard against to infect humans. The first thing to be affected is often the human spirit. For this, we have a special monitoring system to conduct targeted assessments of infected individuals. Individuals with an infection level of less than 10% are generally still within the normal range, but they are relatively more sensitive, more irritable or more prone to depression, with greater mood swings and prone to some impulsive behaviors. When the infection level is between 10% and 50%, the target can observe obvious abnormalities and may become extremely mechanical, numb, or crazy. And the infected in this range will lose consciousness, show strong aggression, and have the instinct to infect others. The infection level is between 50% and 99%. As the level of infection increases, the above situation will become more serious. and the potential of the infected person's body will be developed to the maximum extent, reaching the limit of the human body in all aspects. At the same time, the infected person at this level may have a strong vitality. This also varies from person to person. We have seen more exaggerated cases. Even if they were severely injured by decapitation, they could still be safe and sound. Chu Cheng immediately thought of the scene when he first played the game last night and saw the man named Edge beheading himself in the conference room of Clean Building. So that was the infected person with a nearly 100% infection level? However, this ancient existence in awakening and the performance from affecting the body to affecting the flesh somehow made him have some strange associations. From the beginning of the pollution, the sin value dropped wildly, and when the sin value dropped to a certain level, it began to go crazy. After it was crazy enough, the mental state might also be reflected in the flesh, causing some changes that science cannot explain. So the ancient existence you are talking about, is it possible that the old man just happens to be surnamed Ken and likes to give candy? If the infection level is below 50%, there is still hope. The lower the coefficient, the less impact it will have, and the easier it will be to restore, Chen Miao said. Like your classmates yesterday, although they were infected, the highest coefficient did not exceed 40%, so they are fine. Chu Cheng immediately thought of something when he heard this. He thought about it for a moment, and then asked, what if it reaches 100%? The third interval is only 99%, so there should be a 100% right. Of course there is. Chen Miao nodded to show that Chu's understanding is teachable. There are very few people whose infection level can reach 100%. At the same time, 100% also marks a watershed. She paused and emphasized her tone meaningfully. A watershed that goes beyond the concept of human beings. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15. Use this to test the Kadas? Hearing this, Chu Cheng immediately thought of the classic poem I'm Not a Human Anymore. When the infection level exceeds 100%, the infected person may awaken extraordinary abilities. Chen Miao continued, the possible manifestations are all kinds of strange. Maybe it's elemental control, maybe it's perception enhancement, maybe it's simply a larger span of physical enhancement, or it may be other abilities of different styles. It's a superpower. Chu Cheng understood. He understood this, just like the DC Marvel superheroes, all kinds of messy and weird abilities, useful and useless. I wonder if there are any infected people who can talk to fish. You can understand it this way. Chen Miao nodded. The hard power strength of ordinary people with abilities is still within the controllable range, and modern technology and hot weapons firepower are enough to deal with it. We have not yet found a powerful infected person who can fight hot weapons firepower with his body. But the problem is that many infected people's abilities are not real brute force. Some of them have very strange abilities that are hard to guard against, and this is the most terrifying thing about infected people. Chu Cheng roughly understood. That's right. The firepower of modern technology is actually far beyond what is shown in general film and television works. From the perspective of modern science, no matter how it mutates, or how it is strengthened, all carbon-based creatures will never survive under the fire. But if it is a superpower with special functions, it will be different. It will be particularly difficult to deal with when you don't know the identity of the other party and the type of ability. The infected may have quite terrible power, and at the same time, the infected with an infection coefficient of more than 100% are likely to have completely lost control of their minds, and may have all kinds of unpredictable mental symptoms. It should be noted that this does not mean that they have lost their minds. Although many infected people are out of control, they have clear and orderly thinking, know clearly what they want to do, and will make detailed plans for it. This makes them particularly dangerous. Chu Cheng quickly understood the pros and cons. Madmen are not scary, but they are afraid of madmen having ideas. But this is a coincidence. When it comes to catching madmen, Batman is second, and no one dares to claim to be first. During the 80 years of Gotham, The most famous landmark attraction during this period is undoubtedly the Arkham Asylum with a large number of talents. In the comics, for 80 years, the Master went to Arkham every week, even more frequently than going back to his own manor, and had rich experience in communicating with all kinds of crazy people, even professional counterparts. But nothing is absolute in the world, and the same is true for the infected. Not all infected people will have mental problems. Chen Miao continued, there are some people who, although they are also exposed to the infection and affected, the ancient existence cannot affect their spirits. They will also gain physical changes, increase physical strength, strengthen vitality, and even awaken special abilities, but will not have abnormal mental states. We call these people special people. Chu Cheng quickly digested this information. He felt that something was wrong with this world these 2 days. It was a pity that he thought he had traveled to a peaceful urban background world before, but now it seems that he thought too much. Specials are the people who are best at taking on the task of clearing infected people and eliminating the source of infection. Chen Miao said, our Special Service Section 9 was established for this purpose. During the missions of our Section 9, there may often be risks of contact with infected objects or infected people, so our Section 9 is mainly composed of specials. Even if the specials have not awakened any practical abilities and do not have combat effectiveness, we often absorb them as civilian staff. But specials are different from infected people. The infection coefficient of an infected person can be roughly determined by conventional scanning equipment, but the infection coefficient of a special person cannot be determined by a simple handheld device. If you want to know the specific infection coefficient of a special person, you must undergo a detailed physical examination. Hearing this, Chu Cheng immediately thought of the physical examination he had undergone yesterday. He pointed at himself tentatively. You mean me? Yes. Chen Miao smiled sweetly. Through yesterday's incident, you have proved that you are a special person. Although the physical examination results show that your infection level is below 10%, which does not necessarily mean you have extraordinary abilities, you have obtained the qualification to join the 9th department just by virtue of your identity as a special person. At this point, she leaned back. Her graceful figure sank into the soft cushion, and her stretched chest was particularly prominent in contrast to the girl Tang Li who was fiddling with the tablet next to her. Every man has a side of Kao Feng in his heart, and Chu Cheng is no exception. Chu Cheng could see that this beautiful woman was very bad. He had reason to believe that the bad woman was deliberately testing him, and he was disdainful in his heart. What a joke. You use this to test the cadres. You don't even know if your melon is ripe. Which cadre can't stand such a test? Of course, even if you are a special person, whether to join or not is entirely up to you. We won't force you. Chen Miao continued to explain, but there is one thing you must know. The infected and the special are incompatible, like natural enemies. Once an infected person discovers the existence of a special person, they will immediately eliminate him. Chu Cheng immediately thought of the empty but aggressive eyes of the infected students looking at him on campus yesterday. Thinking back, it still makes people shudder. Now that I think about it, maybe it's because I'm not infected that I was attacked by the infected. Sure enough, it's because I don't want to go along with the crazy people. Chu Cheng quickly thought of what she meant by saying this. The implication is that as a special person, he himself is a physique that is easily targeted by crazy people. Joining the organization is also a good way to get shade under a big tree, and it can get more protection. Of course, joining the organization also means a greater probability of exposure to danger, which depends on your personal choice. Chu Cheng fell into thought. It sounds like a good idea. Of course, it is important to eliminate the infection and maintain order, but for individuals, it is more important to join the organization, to have the opportunity to contact this extraordinary field, more intelligence, more resources, and of course more learning opportunities. Now that we know that this world is very dangerous, no one knows when they may suddenly die of misfortune, so eating and waiting for death is naturally not the first choice. Since there is a choice now, he has to work hard, even if it is just for self-protection. In addition, this is for other special people. For Chu Cheng, there is another consideration for joining the organization. That is his plugin. In the game, manipulating the hero to go out and do things to brush points and brush fragments will inevitably attract the attention of other people over time, especially the attention of the Special Service 9. So if the mastermind behind the scenes can get into the organization, he will have a better chance to understand what they think of the hero he controls and what kind of action measures they are going to take, which will also facilitate Chu Cheng to be prepared. By the way, although this may be relatively minor, the organization's treatment is still good. Chen Miao continued, there is a regular staff with 5 insurances and 1 housing fund, and the monthly salary starts at 50,000, not including the year-end bonus. I'm willing to sacrifice my life for the organization. Chu Cheng expressed his loyalty without saying a word. Chen Miao smiled and secretly took note of it in her heart. She reacted calmly to her showing off her figure, but reacted strongly to the salary and treatment. She is the type who values wealth more than beauty. But no matter what, it is a good thing to have desires, as long as the desires are not out of control. This little brother can be dealt with. As he spoke, the buildings passing by the window were becoming fewer and fewer, and the car carrying a group of people seemed to have driven out of the city. Chu Cheng remembered something and asked, speaking of which, is it okay for you to take me to the headquarters when you don't know whether I will agree to join? What if I say no? Then we have to take you to the headquarters. Chen Miao smiled sweetly again and said, because according to the regulations, civilians cannot know what I just said. So if you know the truth and don't want to join, then we have to take you to the headquarters to erase this part of your memory. Chapter 16 Mothership. Seeing that Chu Cheng didn't say anything, Chen Miao couldn't help but laugh. Ha, don't feel psychologically burdened. Our memory erasure technology is already very mature. We can accurately erase relevant memories based on keywords, and generally will not mistakenly delete other necessary memories. Chu Cheng noticed the limiting condition of general situation and instinctively smelled something wrong. What about extraordinary situations? Well, nothing is absolute in the world. No matter how mature the technology is, it is inevitable that there will be problems. Chen Miao tried to recall. I remember seeing an unexpected situation. It seems that the boy who received memory erasure forgot that he was a boy and had gender recognition disorder. Chu Cheng. Oh, it's not a big problem. Chen Miao comforted him. First of all, the probability of this is very small, and the operation is generally very successful. And there's nothing wrong with thinking that you are a girl. Boys who know how to dress up are cuter than girls these days. It's not a big problem. Chu Cheng had a dark face. Fortunately, he had decided to join the gang, so the risk of wearing women's clothes had to be left to other destined people. So, Chu Cheng looked at the people in the car. You are all special people. Yes. Chen Miao nodded. Then you all have special powers? Ha, how can it be that easy? Chen Miao said, special people's minds will not be affected, and they will not infect other people in any way. But relatively speaking, the average infection coefficient of special people is far lower than that of ordinary infected people. Special people who can reach an infection coefficient of more than 90% are rare. My coefficient is about 52%. Xiao Tang is 30%. Jianping is. She got stuck at this point and looked at the driver who was looking at the car with a little embarrassment. 27%. The driver answered briefly. Oh, yes, 27%. I remember it. This made Chu Cheng realize that it was not only him who thought that this driver was a nobody. The highest among us is Agent Luo. He is 87%. When Chen Miao introduced, Chu Cheng glanced at the bald man in the front row. Luo Yajin was still humming a little tune, as if he didn't hear it. He seemed to be humming the same song over and over again. Chu Cheng had never heard of this melody, but he felt it sounded like an old song. This coefficient will reflect the degree of our influence. The deeper the degree, the more obvious the various special features will be. So generally speaking, the higher the coefficient, the more outstanding the strength will be. Of course, this only refers to the hardware quality. Practical ability is all round. Fighting techniques, combat skills, the use of weapons, combat awareness and brains will determine the outcome. So as long as they are well trained, even a special person with a low infection coefficient can defeat an infected person with a higher coefficient than themselves. Chu Cheng nodded, indicating that I understand this. Isn't it just fighting monsters above their level? It's an old routine in novels. He simplified the routine of crossing levels in old novels, and it felt like it was almost like a first grade student challenging a second grade student. There is an insurmountable decisive gap between the second grade and the first grade. That is, the second grade has mastered multiplication and division, while the first grade can only count fingers. However, although the protagonist is only a first grade student, he is an excellent student in the first grade. His mental arithmetic ability far exceeds that of his peers and he can instantly use numbers within 15 to fight the enemy. In addition, when the protagonist is really unable to do anything, he usually has a super external calculator, but it is too shocking and will not be used easily unless it is forced. Once it is revealed, it must be used to show off in front of all the elementary school students in the school. The car stopped quickly. In front of it was an inconspicuous two-story building, covered by lush jungle. Chu Cheng followed the others out of the car and walked into the gate. You look a little disappointed. Chen Miao looked at Chu Cheng with interest. Do you think our office building should be more impressive? Chu Cheng didn't say anything, but he really thought so in his heart. Just now, their organization was so awesome. It sounded like the ultimate line of defense for peace. But this two-story building looked worse than the village committee. Chen Miao smiled and didn't explain. The group walked into the building. There was a duty room next to the door. The duty uncle sat in it with his legs crossed, blowing the electric fan and reading the newspaper. When he noticed the few people coming in, he raised his eyelids lazily and then quickly resumed reading his newspaper. After walking through a long corridor, there was an elevator at the end. Chu Cheng followed the three people into the elevator and found that there were only two buttons, 1 and 2. But Chen Miao seemed to have pressed a hidden mechanism, and soon the seemingly old metal plate automatically separated, revealing an exquisite 9-square password dial. She entered a string of passwords with her 5 fingers flying, and then the elevator started to operate on its own without pressing the floor number. Chu Cheng felt that the elevator was going down and heading underground. Chu Cheng felt as if he had guessed it. This is also a common routine in film and television dramas. Awesome organizations often like to use inconspicuous buildings to cover up their real headquarters, such as the tailor shop in the movie Kingsman. And their real bases are often hidden deep underground. Just when he thought he had seen through the truth, he felt that the elevator stopped going down. Then it actually started to move forward. When Chu Cheng sensed the direction of the elevator's movement, he was a little confused again. Wait, is this thing really an elevator? Can it move forward underground? When the elevator door opened along the slide rail, Chu Cheng suddenly felt that the style of the painting suddenly changed. What appeared in front of them was a long metal corridor, with the alloy walls reflecting a pale metallic luster, and lead-like light strips extending along the corridor. The more you look at it, the more you can't help but think of the sci-fi style base buried deep underground in sci-fi movies. The automatic door slid open in front of the few people, and a room full of sci-fi came into view. The floating screen-like future technology floated in the air, and men and women in uniforms walked in and out of the busy space. The style of the painting suddenly became right. Is this your underground base? Chu Cheng asked with his head tilted. Chen Miao smiled mysteriously. Not entirely right. A few minutes later, ripples appeared on the calm lake's surface, and birds on the shore spread their wings and flew away. The lake's surface suddenly rose like a mountain peak, and 10,000 tons of water fell back to the water surface, like a dark giant whale breaking out of the water. It was a giant beast with steel bones, and its shape resembled an aircraft carrier. But in general, just as there is no car in cherries, and no wife in wife cakes, an aircraft carrier cannot fly. But this one is an exception. The blades of the 6 turbine engines turned into after images at a speed invisible to the naked eye, and tons of water were evaporated into steam. The invisible propulsion flames lifted up the huge guy that covered the sky like an invisible hand, like a steel cloud. Chu Cheng stood in a room of this behemoth, watching tons of water falling against the porthole, and the corners of his mouth twitched. How is it? Chen Miao looked a little proud. This is our mobile fortress, one of the only 5 air carriers in the world. Chu Cheng. No, your mothership is a brother of the ship of SHIELD in the Marvel studio, right? To be honest, this mothership with several electric fans blowing into the sky caused Chu Cheng to have some bad associations. Because Mariah Hill, deputy director of SHIELD, complained in the original work that this thing would fall down 3 times a week. Well, strictly speaking, it seems that they can't be blamed, because according to incomplete statistics from various fantasy works in movies and TV, the only fate of such powerful flying things in the sky seems to be crashing, just like a curse that cannot be escaped, even if it crosses the heavens and the worlds. Maybe because he has seen too many similar plots, Chu Cheng has a very bad impression of such fancy flying things in the sky. At this moment, in his eyes, the sci-fi style big guy under his feet has become a flying grave, and it would not be surprising if it falls down one day. P.S. Please vote for recommendation. Chapter 17 Absolutely Special. Ask for monthly ticket. What's wrong? Noticing Chu Cheng's complicated expression, Chen Miao asked. Nothing. I just wonder if it's unsafe to fly such a large base in the sky. Chu Cheng said honestly. After hearing his words, Chen Miao burst out laughing. Don't worry about this, she said with a smile. The airbase is very safe. In fact, it may be the safest place in the world. No outsider can invade. After hearing this, Chu Cheng's expression became more complicated. He vaguely remembered that people on the Marvel studio also said the same thing about the SHIELD's floating carrier. But as everyone knows, the security system of the SHIELD carrier is like Confucius is in charge of it. Its security concept is outstanding. It's a pleasure to have friends from afar. Any monsters can come in and out, which is more casual than a public toilet. Of course, that is metaphysics, and it doesn't mean that all the flying things in the sky are graves. Chu Cheng sincerely hopes that the giant ship under his feet can get rid of the curse of his peers in the heavens and all realms. Following Chen Miao in the complex metal corridor, Chu Cheng soon came to a bright office. The office is located near the window on the ship. The room is very tidy, with a clean desk on the table, metal filing cabinets neatly placed against the wall, and a water dispenser next to the cabinet. Behind the desk is a man in a white coat. Chu Cheng's first impression of him was that he was exquisite. He was dressed neatly, his mustache was meticulously trimmed, and his eyes behind the thick round framed lenses were bright. He immediately raised his head when Chu Cheng entered the door and stepped forward enthusiastically. "Ha, you must be the latest discovered special person. This is Professor Miyazaki, an expert in the study of infected people." Chen Miao explained. "Next he will be responsible for a series of physical tests on you." Physical test? Physical examination? Rather than a physical examination, it's better to say a physical fitness test. Professor Miyazaki smiled and stretched out a hand. "Don't worry, it's just to see if your body is healthy." When Chu Cheng shook his hand, he found that the professor had a strong hand and seemed to be quite strong. When he approached, he also smelled a faint scent of perfume. Exquisite appearance, perfume, and an expression of expectation that almost undisguisedly said, "Let me have a good look." Chu Cheng instinctively felt that he needed to keep his distance. This professor looked gay. But fortunately, as he said, the test was basically a physical test. The main items included running, jumping, punching strength, and pistol shooting 100-meter sprint. Chu Cheng closed his eyes and rushed forward, running in 13.38 seconds. Professor Miyazaki checked the clock and stared at the number for a long time, with an expression on his face that clearly said that's it. 3,000-meter run. Chu Cheng finally finished the run with all his might. He estimated that he was able to persevere after playing games for 2 days and his physical fitness had improved significantly. Otherwise, with his otaku quality, he might have died after 3,000 meters. The following jumping and punching strength were also calm, completely at the level of a student with relatively outstanding physical fitness. This level might be rated as excellent if he was put in the school team, but it is still a student level after all. Finally, it was the pistol shooting session. When a researcher handed the heavy pistol to Chu Cheng, he said helplessly, "I have never touched this thing." "It's okay, just shoot casually," Professor Miyazaki said. "According to our statistics, some infected people are born with shooting talents, and they may be able to get started soon." So Chu Cheng picked up the gun helplessly and tried hard to aim at the target 10 meters away. He squinted his eyes and aimed for a long time before pulling the trigger. A series of gunshots echoed in the closed space. A whole magazine was emptied. After seeing the target's hit status clearly on the monitor, Professor Miyazaki fell silent. Hayek, no one's in the shooting range was spared. Loek, hang a banana on the neck of a monkey, it may be better than this. Chu Cheng was a little embarrassed about this result, but it was expected and reasonable. After all, this gun was not his own, and was different from what he was used to. It was normal to miss the target, if he was not comfortable using it. The test results seemed to disappoint Professor Miyazaki, and he quickly gave a conclusion. A special person without ability. He said, his mind and body are both immune to the infection source, and all the infection sources will not affect him in any form. After that, Chen Miao quickly explained to Chu Cheng that this situation is rare, but not completely absent. There are also some people with similar situations in the Special Service Department 9. Most special people are only immune to the mental impact of the infection, but the body will still be strengthened and transformed, or even awaken special abilities. But it is different for a small number of people. Their mind and body are completely immune to the infection, and there is no difference from ordinary people. They are called absolute special people. The test was completed, and then Tang Li led him to complete the various entry procedures. The 9th department was quite efficient. He went to several departments in a row to get several stamps, and soon his establishment was issued. Here, your certificate, Tang Li said in a soft voice, and handed the certificate that had just been distributed to Chu Cheng. Chu Cheng was a little surprised. Why are there 3 certificates? One is our real certificate, from the 9th Special Service. The other 2 are from the Public Security Bureau and the Intelligence Bureau. Seeing that he didn't understand, Tang Li patiently explained. The 9th Special Service is currently a non-public organization. Under certain circumstances, our own certificates may not be useful. So agents can present appropriate certificates to facilitate tasks according to actual conditions. Got it? It means that they also have vests. On the one hand, it is convenient to do things, and on the other hand, it is convenient to pass the buck. The Public Security Bureau and the Intelligence Bureau are really like a pot from the sky when someone is at home. No one knows how many big and small black pots have been unknowingly put on these 2 heads in the past. That's almost done. Tang Li smiled. Welcome to join us. You are still a student, so you don't need to report to work on weekdays. Just remember to keep in touch at all times. Then there is nothing for me to do? Chu Cheng asked. After completing the entry procedures, he is now a person with a monthly salary of tens of thousands. He doesn't have to go to work or report to work every day. He can do whatever he wants every day. This money is hot. It will take a while for your position to be determined, but with your conditions and abilities, it will probably be a civilian position. Before that, you can read some materials, or work with other special agents, ask people questions, take notes, and learn from them. By the way, Agent Luo who went to your school yesterday happened to have a case to investigate, and he will be leaving soon. You can learn from him first. When Chu Cheng came to Luo Yajin's office, the board agent seemed to be out. So at Tang Li's suggestion, Chu Cheng waited in his office for a while. After explaining, Tang Li left to do his own thing. With nothing to do, Chu Cheng casually looked around the office. Compared with Professor Miyazaki's room just now, the area of this office was not large. The desk occupied nearly half of the space, and the desktop was messy. Documents printed with the word internal were thrown on the table casually, and next to it was a bag of opened potato chips. He noticed a photo frame on the desk, and inside the frame was an old photo. 2 people in sheriff's uniforms were arm in arm, facing the camera, smiling brightly. I was pretty cool when I was young, wasn't I? A voice came from behind Chu Cheng. He then noticed that Agent Luo Yajin had come into the room without him noticing. Sorry, I didn't mean to look. It's okay. Luo Yajin waved his hand and glanced at the photo. It was when I was young, when I was still in the sheriff's office. Look how good he was back then. Look at his physique, his muscles. Chu Cheng nodded in agreement. And his hair. Yes, and his hair. Agent Luo's voice stopped abruptly, as if he had thought of something sad. Chapter 18. Friendly Conversation. A few minutes later, Chu Cheng had already boarded the plane back to the ground with Luo Yajin. As far as Chu Cheng understood, this flight was probably equivalent to a shuttle bus. It would take off at a certain time and send the people on the mothership to the designated ground base. This made him feel even more annoyed about the setting of the headquarters as a flying graveyard, and it was inconvenient to commute on the ground. However, Luo Yajin also told him that most of the employees on the mothership lived here for a long time and did not leave the ship often. If the agents had urgent tasks, they would also be arranged for special planes, and they did not have to wait for the shuttle bus stupidly. Chu Cheng only needed to go through the reporting procedures on the mothership this time, and he would not need to come here often in the future. When they arrived at the ground base, the off-road vehicle that Luo Yajin had applied for in advance was already in place. The two drove out of the base and drove all the way to Jiangdu. Before they got in the car and their butts were warm, Luo Yajin had already lit a cigarette. He opened the car window, leaned back in the seat, puffed and hummed a little tune. He tried to hand Chu Cheng another cigarette. Want one? I really don't know how. Chu Cheng shook his head. Chu Cheng doesn't smoke, drink, or perm his hair. He is a good young man. Except for staying up late sometimes and pretending to be cool with his own hands. He has no other bad habits. Even the guy selling wolfberries downstairs said he was very healthy. They say smoking is harmful to health. Luo Yajin said, while taking another full puff nonchalantly, blowing the smoke ring out of the window, and then continued with a smile. But it doesn't matter. If I learned anything in the first half of my life, I think this should be the most important thing. Enjoy life in time. You never know which will come first, tomorrow or an accident, so it's better to live well today. The money is still there, but the person is gone. Chu Cheng said. Haha, this is a brilliant summary. Luo Yajin agreed deeply. It's not brilliant, it's a fart. What? Oh, nothing. Chu Cheng changed the subject. I mean, where are we going this time? Find an informant. Luo Yajin said concisely and clearly. We have locked on a possible impulsive infection source, and now we are going there. What is an impulsive infection source? Chu Cheng asked without understanding. By the way, you don't know about the source of infection yet. Luo Yajin just remembered. Well, let me tell you briefly. There are many types of infection sources. For example, medium type infection sources. This source is usually an object, which may be a pen, a cigarette, or a sculpture, a portrait, or anything. This type of medium will infect nearby targets, but one target will not infect another target. Chu Cheng thought of the sculpture in the conference room of Clean Building. For example, what we are dealing with this time should be an impulsive infection source. Luo Yajin continued, this type of infection source is often a living organism. The reason why it is called this is that this type of infection source cannot infect other individuals in normal state. Only when its emotions fluctuate greatly and its negative emotions are strong can it infect the targets around it, and the strength of its infection ability is also related to negative emotions. Chu Cheng thought of the couple who quarreled in school. So, it's like the one in our school? When they quarreled, their negative emotions were high, and they infected the people around them. Yes. Luo Yajin said, but your school was just a small incident. The source of infection was not strong, and the infection level was also very low, and they can recover quickly. Oh, right. Speaking of this, he showed a serious expression. Like those students, the infection level is very low, and they can easily return to normal. But once it exceeds 50%, there is no hope. Luo Yajin said, and once it exceeds 80%, unless we are special people, the consciousness of that person is dead. The infected with an infection level of more than 80% are no longer human, but have become something else. You must always remember this point, and cannot regard them as human beings. This is a bloody lesson. Chu Cheng smelled the flavor of the story. He guessed that something might have happened behind the bloody lesson, but Luo Yajin didn't mean to continue. Let's take a look at the target we are looking for this time. He took out a photo from the inner pocket of his shirt and handed it to Chu Cheng. Chu Cheng picked it up and saw that the guy had a labor form hairstyle, a round head, a round body, a belly exposed under his tight t-shirt, and a big gold chain. He almost had the word "not easy to mess with" written on his face. Chu Cheng heard that in the early days, gangsters wore gold chains so that they could sell them for emergency when they ran away one day. Later, it gradually became a standard. But looking at the photo, the guy's chain has faded, so it must not be sold for much money. Xiao Risheng, a member of a local gang. The gang this guy belongs to has lost several lives recently, so this time we are going to find out the situation. If there is really something wrong with them, we will deal with it. What if it's not? Chu Cheng asked. No? Then of course it's none of our business. Luo Yajin said as a matter of course. Chu Cheng thought about it, and it seemed so. Their organization built on the Flying Grave is essentially a lunatic asylum, which only cares about lunatics and not crimes. This model made him think of the famous tax authorities of a certain ugly country in his previous life. Murder? Sorry to bother you, that's fine, you can do whatever you want. Tax evasion? You're done. Even God can't save you today, I said. Unless we encounter clues and evidence related to a major murder case during the investigation, and only we have it. Luo Yajin said again. Oh. Will we make an exception in this case? No. Luo Yajin smiled with a cigarette in his mouth. We'll call the police. Chu Cheng. Well, it sounds reasonable. After driving for about half an hour, Luo Yajin parked the car opposite a bar. Chu Cheng looked up through the car window and saw a sign hanging above with the word Kyozi Bar in neon lights. Some of the strokes flickered due to poor contact. Is it here? Chu Cheng asked. It should be. This is one of their idiots. According to the intelligence, Xiao Risheng is here at this point. Luo Yajin unbuckled his seatbelt and got out of the car, but stopped Chu Cheng from getting out. Just stay here and wait for me, he said. I'll go ask them a few friendly questions and be back soon. He deliberately emphasized the word friendly. Chu Cheng seemed to understand something, so he didn't say anything, just nodded and stayed in the car obediently. He sat in the car and watched the agent light up another cigarette and put it in his mouth, then walked across the street to the bar across the street. Chu Cheng sat there bored for a few minutes and soon heard a shrill wail from the bar across the street. The sound was so shrill that it reminded people of Tom's heart-wrenching wail when he was caught in the door, exploded by firecrackers, and stung by wasps in the old classic animation Tom and Jerry. Then there was the sound of fighting, the sound of heavy objects being thrown to the ground, the sound of glass being smashed, and even the deafening sound of gunfire. A moment later, the glass on the side of the bar facing the street was smashed into pieces with a clang, and a chubby guy crashed through the glass and rolled out, groaning on the sidewalk like a dead pig. The door of the bar was pushed open again, and Agent Luo Yajin walked out, while straightening his clothes, still holding the cigarette in his mouth. When he opened the door, Chu Cheng could vaguely glimpse the mess inside, and the people lying all over the place through the gap. Luo Yajin walked slowly to the man lying on the ground, turned him over, put one foot on his chest, and said slowly, "Okay, Mr. Xiao. Are you willing to talk now? Chapter 19 Do you want some too?" Xiao Risheng was groaning underfoot, his expression like a piglet being put on the table to be slaughtered. Luo Yajin, with a cigarette in his mouth, raised his hand and fired a shot without even looking. The bullet, with a scorching air wave, hit Xiao Risheng's face and hit the ground, leaving a shallow bullet hole on the ground and a bloody mark on his face. Xiao Risheng immediately stopped wailing in pain, but his body twitched slightly due to the severe pain, and fine beads of sweat oozed out of his forehead. Luo Yajin took another puff of cigarette slowly, and then spoke. "Look, I'm not an unreasonable person," he said. "I'm just here to ask a few simple questions. I personally have never advocated violence. In comparison, I'm more willing to take peaceful means." At this time, Chu Cheng noticed that the door of the bar behind Luo Yajin slowly opened, and a man in a black vest with blood all over his head staggered out. The man held an ominous object in his hand. It was square and angular. It was suitable for both close defense and long-range attack. Hitting from the side doubled the damage, and a diagonal headshot was a fatal blow on the spot. It was the first of the 10 ancient artifacts, known as the brick. Seeing that the man was holding the artifact, and seemed to be about to attack, Chu Cheng was about to remind his teammates, but he saw Luo Yajin fired a shot behind him without even turning his head. Without even looking, he strangely shattered the man's knee with one shot. Although the black vest held an ancient artifact, he was helpless. The man's knee was shattered by a shot, exploding into a gorgeous blood flower. He howled and fell to the ground. The brick in his hand was thrown unconsciously and hit his own head with a bang, knocking him out directly. Chu Cheng was also a little surprised. He could hit without even turning his head. Isn't this cheating? If he were the Black Vest, he would probably live in Bengdu by now. Shut it down, it's boring. Moreover, not to mention these thugs, even Chu Cheng was a little surprised that Brother Luo was so ruthless and taciturn. People at the Public Security Bureau have to think twice before shooting, and they have to write a long and boring report after the incident. But Luo Yajin directly raided the house, fought in broad daylight, and he just shot without any hesitation. Xiao Risheng, who was stepped on by the foot, shuddered all over after the gunshot. He now fully realized that this man was not a good person, and he was not on the same level as the sheriffs they usually dealt with. Seeing that Luo Yajin had finished shooting, and the muzzle of the gun turned towards him again, Xiao Risheng shuddered all over and hurriedly said, "Wait, I'll tell you. It's the snakehead. Our boss has recently interfered with his business, and he is very unhappy, so he wants to retaliate. The people who died recently, that you are investigating, are all our brothers, and we have been retaliated by them." "Who is the snakehead?" Luo Yajin asked. "Our other local boss. His business scope is generally the sale of banned drugs." Luo Yajin said nothing, put the muzzle of the gun to the man's waist and abdomen, and fired a shot. The shrill scream echoed throughout the street. The sound was heartbreaking. "Wrong answer. Think about it again," Luo Yajin said lazily, and blew another smoke ring. Xiao Risheng didn't know how he saw through his lies, nor did he know how much information the man in front of him had. His snot and tears made his face full of flesh look embarrassed, and he cried hoarsely, "Please, if I tell anyone, the boss will grind me into slag. I still have a family." Luo Yajin didn't say anything, and fired another shot. The bullet tore the flesh, and the bone fragments splashed out with the gushing blood. Another scream that would scare the devil. "If you really don't want to cooperate, I think when your boss comes, I'm afraid the only thing he can grind into slag is your grave." Luo Yajin shrugged. "You lunatic. Devil." Xiao Risheng screamed at the top of his lungs. "Maybe, but he was also a lunatic with a gun," Luo Yajin said slowly. "Now, the answer." Xiao Risheng dared not neglect it anymore, so he had to grit his teeth and endure the pain to explain. "Okay, those dead people, those murders, are not ordinary gang affairs. It's sus. We saw a ghost." "That's a good start." Luo Yajin nodded. "Go on." "Well, it was just a very ordinary business," Xiao Risheng said, while enduring the severe pain. "It was just an ordinary sale of contraband. We arrived at the place agreed with the seller, and we exchanged money and goods. It should have been a very ordinary transaction. But something went wrong on the way, and we were seen during the transaction. The street where the bar was located was originally quite remote, and the noise just now scared away the few passers-by. At this moment, you can hear a pin drop on the street, so Chu Cheng can basically hear their conversation from the car." When Chu Cheng heard this, he was thinking, "So the next plot is that you caught the peeping guy. You said that the big brother shot him, and then the big brother said no, I want to test the drug. We didn't care who the guy was at the time. He looked like a homeless person. He was so dirty that I couldn't even remember his appearance. It must be just a coincidence that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time," Xiao Risheng said with pain. "He begged us to let him go, but it's impossible to think with your feet. The big brother who led the team drove over him with the car, and later he couldn't even see his human shape. Then we poured him into the concrete pile, which is also a common thing. Everyone in the underworld knows that if you commit a crime, you have to pay the price. No one knows how many concrete piles in the prosperous city have human bones hidden in them." This made Chu Cheng feel a little uncomfortable. He felt that this statement should be more or less exaggerated. But if he felt a little unsafe at first, when he saw Luo Yajin go up and conduct a Ubisoft-style infiltration and cremation-style interrogation, now he has a little feeling that these people deserved it. The people in charge of pouring this time are Chris and Aki Yang from our team. They have done a lot of this kind of work and are more experienced. They know how to do it most efficiently and how to make the piles harder so that they will not break when driving them. They also have to consider the problem of long-term storage and prevent them from cracking after pouring. They finished the work quickly, and we went out for supper together that night. Shaorishan paused here, with a look of horror on his face. But this time is different. He said, the next day, there was no sign at all, and Akiang was killed by Chris. No, that's an understatement. His face was twisted with pain and fear, and his voice became rough. When we got there, Akiang had already turned into a rotten body. Chris was kneeling beside him, mumbling something incoherently, while stabbing and scratching him with a knife. He didn't stop until we got there. Then he stood up, turned his head, and looked at us, his mouth and face full of blood. I'll never forget that look. What's even more bizarre is that he actually smiled and talked to us. He said. Shaorishan swallowed a mouthful of saliva mixed with blood, his face pale from blood loss or fear. Do you want some too? Chapter 20. Get off work on time. We killed him. Shaorishan said with difficulty. But the process was not easy. Chris almost turned into an out-and-out devil. I don't know what other words can be used to describe him. He was stabbed at least a dozen times, and his body was covered in blood, but he was like nothing happened. A large group of us couldn't subdue him, and he killed several brothers and injured more. Later, Brother Wang brought a shotgun and almost broke his waist and abdomen. But he didn't stop, holding the blood-soaked knife, and continued to crawl towards us. We could even see the spine connecting his upper and lower body. What's more terrifying is, Shaorishan held his breath, and his vision, which was already blurred due to blood loss, seemed to have a nightmare-like hallucination, which reminded him of some extremely terrifying scenes. He was laughing. Shaorishan said, I will never forget that his bloody and broken body was connected by a section of the spine, but he was still laughing, like crazy until his head was smashed into meat scraps. Luo Yajin threw away the cigarette, but that was about to burn the filter while listening. He put a new cigarette in his mouth, took out a lighter and lit it, and exhaled another cloud of smoke. We thought it was over, but it wasn't. Shaorishan took a breath and said, then there was Yoshida from another group. I wasn't there that time. I only heard that it happened during an unloading mission. Yoshida suddenly attacked without any warning, picked up a crowbar and smashed the head of a brother present. 2 of the other 7 brothers who were unloading at the time were killed by him. In the end, it was said that he finally stopped his actions after being riddled with bullets, and he was still laughing until the end. Only then did we realize that things were not simple. That haunting laughter was like an infectious disease. You kill those guys and smash their heads into pieces, but you can't kill that laughter. Sure enough, 2 days later, another buddy went crazy, suddenly laughing wildly and picking up a bottle of wine and smashing it on the head of the person next to him. Then the next day, another person suddenly attacked without any warning. Luo Yajin was still smoking calmly, and he didn't know what he was thinking. We are all going crazy. These days, all of us have to be very careful. Everyone has to be on guard against everyone around them. Even the best brothers cannot be trusted. We live in fear every day. Anyone who makes even the slightest suspicious move will be immediately pinned down by the people next to them. By the way, there was also an unlucky guy who was hit hard on the head when he was suspected of having an attack. He suffered a concussion on the spot, but later we found out that he just wanted to get a tissue. Is that so? Luo Yajin roughly understood the situation. He thought about it and asked again. Where is the human stake that was cast after you killed the homeless man? If you want to find him, you may be disappointed. Shaorishan gritted his teeth and said, we have done this a long time ago. We checked his identity and found that the unlucky guy's name was Guan Yi, an unemployed bachelor in the slums, who was just kicked out by the landlord last month. The boss didn't allow it, but I went with a few brothers to find the place where the human stake was cast. You know, there are always people in the underworld who are more superstitious. We all think that these weird things are haunted by evil spirits. So we thought of digging him out and burying him decently. Maybe it will help. Then what? Did you dig him out? Shaorishan swallowed his saliva. No. He shook his head, and his empty and frightened eyes seemed to see the scene at that time again. His weak breathing became more rapid. We found the cement pile, but found nothing. The people inside had disappeared long ago. Oh, I'm very sure we didn't remember the wrong place. It's right there, right there, right there, right there. Xiao Risheng said with fear. I tell you it's true. It's that guy named Guanyi. Maybe he turned into a ghost, or maybe he turned into something else. But he's got his eyes on us, and he won't stop until all of us are killed by each other. That sounds good. Luo Yajin grinned. Okay, then here's the last question. The address of the construction site, the headquarters of your gang, and the address of your boss. Under the severe pain and fear of death, Xiao Risheng turned into a classic villain who would answer any question and talk about anything, even if it wasn't asked. Everything he could and couldn't say came out of his mouth. The desire to survive drove him to tell everything he knew. As for whether he would be torn to pieces by his boss later, that was a matter for the future. What mattered was saving his life first. After much persuasion, Luo Yajin finally finished asking questions and released his foot from the other's chest. It was a pleasant conversation. Luo Yajin smiled easily. For some reason, his brisk tone and smiling expression made Chu Cheng feel as if he was saying, we had a great time chatting, the children liked it very much, and if there are any questions we don't understand, we will definitely come back next time. Oh, by the way, you'd better tell the truth. Luo Yajin was about to leave, but suddenly remembered something, looked back and smiled softly. Otherwise, next time we meet, I will break your other leg. Xiao Risheng was stunned, thinking, what does the other leg mean? I haven't broken my leg yet. Before he could figure it out, Luo Yajin shot him twice without saying a word, and shot his two legs with incredible precision, causing blood to splatter. Xiao Risheng screamed miserably, and finally fainted in the severe pain. Chu Cheng thought about it. Luo Jie said that, if he told a lie, he would break the remaining leg, and after that, he shot two people's legs with two shots. So the remaining leg he mentioned is his. It's too cruel. Sorry for the wait. Luo Yajin sat back in the driver's seat and started the engine. He glanced at Chu Cheng and smiled. What? Do you think it's a bit too cruel? To be honest, this kind of bloody scene did make Chu Cheng feel a little uncomfortable. Although he had seen more exciting scenes before, it was after all across the screen. For a student like him who grew up in peacetime, there are not many opportunities to see blood. Don't worry, they are not good people. Luo Yajin said casually while driving. Those guys have done more cruel things to others. That's not it, Chu Cheng asked. I just wonder if doing this on the street will attract unnecessary attention. Although this road looks relatively remote and there are not many people who meddle in other people's business, because everyone knows that the people in this bar are not good people, but such a big commotion may attract the attention of the Public Security Bureau. Unnecessary attention? Public Security Bureau? Haha, don't worry. Luo Yajin didn't care. This kind of thing will only be handed over to the Special Service 9 Division for internal handling in the end. Well, won't the higher-ups take care of it? Chu Cheng suddenly felt that the Special Service 9 Division was too hesitant. How strong must their backers be if they didn't get punished for such behavior? Of course they will. Luo Yajin took a puff of cigarette and said as a matter of course, a criticism report stating the reasons, a disciplinary action, demotion, dismissal, etc. Oh, and they will also do a mental evaluation for you. That thing is the most boring. I have to do it every few days, and it makes me sleepy every time. It has to be done every few days, so the higher-ups really think that your mental state is not very stable, right? Chu Cheng was embarrassed. I can't help it. I just can't hold it in when I'm upset with someone. If it weren't for this, I would have been promoted a long time ago. It's an old habit that can't be changed. He remembered something. Oh, yes, haven't I mentioned it to you yet? Why don't I work at the Public Security Bureau? No, Chu Cheng said. Luo Yajin, wearing a police uniform in the office, looked quite young, and it must have been a few years since then. Because I had the old problem of not being able to control myself at that time. That time, there was a pedophile who was arrested and brought to the police station. After he came in, he acted like a big shot and didn't take anyone seriously. Luo Yajin took another slow puff and blew out a long smoke ring. Then I broke his neck in the interrogation room. He said calmly. Chu Cheng. So naturally I was fired. Luo Yajin smiled. Although he said he was fired, his tone was as if he was talking about something happy, until later he was discovered and became a special person, and then he came to the 9th department. He lit the ash and smiled. But fortunately, these people today are quite sensible and easy to talk to. Xiao Rishan was quite active in answering my questions. The ambulance came in time and he shouldn't die. It's not a big deal. Chu Cheng was silent. Redafine easy to talk to. Chu Cheng didn't see their conversation just now. When Xiao Rishan was stepped on by Luoje, his expression could not be described as a loss of parents, but Spider-Man riding a horse and pulling Peter. According to Luoje's behavior, Chu Cheng estimated that there were not many people in the world who were difficult to talk to because they dared not to. Then, what should we do next? Go to their gang den. Chu Cheng heard the last few questions asked by Luo Yajin, and he tried to guess the next move. What do we do in their den? Luo Yajin said, our mission is to find and eliminate the source. According to Xiao Rishan, the source should most likely be the homeless man who was poured into the concrete pile by them. Then we should naturally check his identity, the contacts around him, etc. But if we leave it alone, their gang may infect more people. Chu Cheng asked. That belongs to the problem of infection and transmission prevention and control, which is not our responsibility. Luo Yajin shook his head. Our mission is to investigate and execute elimination. In this case, as long as the situation is reported, the Prevention and Control Department will naturally find them. There is also a special Prevention and Control Department. So, do we need to close the city? Chu Cheng asked. If it's serious, maybe. But it shouldn't be this time. Luo Yajin said, based on the current situation, the infection source is probably not at a high level, and the infectiousness is not very strong. Impulsive infection usually spreads when the latent target has strong negative emotions, and it often only infects those who already have darkness in their hearts. The stronger the inner darkness, the stronger it will be. Otherwise, like those students in your school yesterday, those with mild infection may recover quickly after a short period of abnormality. So I guess the scope of infection should still be mainly among gang members. As long as they and their contacts are controlled, it will be easy. Of course, these are just my personal guesses. What to do in specific situations depends on the judgment of the Prevention and Control Department, which is none of our business. Well, okay. Chu Cheng thought for a while. Then do we need to report to the Public Security Bureau about the contraband transaction in the cement piles? Whatever, just report it when you think of it. But reporting it may not be useful. Luo Yajin shrugged. This is not the first time this has happened. The Public Security Bureau sometimes knows and sometimes doesn't. But as that bastard just said, it's just an ordinary daily routine. Besides, he is just a homeless man who has disappeared for such a long time and no one cares about him. Even if no one investigates, no one will ask. Believe me, few people in the Public Security Bureau are willing to take this kind of job. I came out of there, and I know best what kind of people are in there. Luo Yajin threw away his cigarette butt and replaced it with a new one. Although they had only known each other for a short time, Chu Cheng had already begun to worry about the lungs of this senior. Okay, so where are we going next? Chu Cheng moved closer to the window, keeping himself a little further away from the steaming clouds. Let's go to the concrete pile and take a look. Luo Yajin raised his watch and glanced at the time. Well, tomorrow, he said, it's time to get off work. Chu Cheng. P.S. The contract status has been changed. Please give me monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Chapter 21 Casino. Chu Cheng stood downstairs, watching Agent Luo's car go away from his sight, and didn't know what to say for a moment. It is said that working overtime in the middle of the day is very hard, and it is even more painful to not work overtime and have no money to spend. At this time, some people may not even get off work, but a super agent actually left work and ran away on time. Even if infection prevention and control is the responsibility of the Prevention and Control Department, the investigation and cleanup of the source of infection cannot be delayed, right? Even if we don't say that they work all night, isn't it inappropriate to leave work so early? But it's okay. In this way, Chu Cheng can move freely. He returned to the room, turned on the computer, and started the game directly. In a moment, his screen has changed to Batman's third-person perspective, and the location where he appeared is still the place where he logged off the game last night. Chu Cheng stretched his 10 fingers, adjusted a comfortable sitting position, and prepared snacks and drinks. The night is just about to begin. Chu Cheng also wrote down what Sheo Risheng said during the friendly conversation with Agent Luo. He entered the address into the game map and quickly locked onto the location of the gang den he mentioned. On the surface, it was a casino. The dark gothic building had a sign with the glowing words "at large," which was not sure whether it was simply to highlight the personality or to imply sarcasm. Batman landed on a high place nearby. Chu Cheng did not move again, but turned on the detective vision to scan the building structure. Luo Yajin said that it was just an unknown life, and similar incidents may have happened many times. Maybe someone dies inexplicably every month, but no one cares, and no one will pay the price. He was wrong. Maybe it didn't happen before, but it will happen in the future. These 2 days of exploration allowed Chu Cheng to discover another wonderful use of detective vision. Also, like traditional Batman games, the detective mode in the game will mark enemies and civilians. It will tell the player in a concise and clear manner in the cold-toned picture which enemies need to be defeated in the field of vision, and which are innocent people or teammates. This feature also allows players to quickly scan enemies and criminals in the nearby area, including when controlling Batman to wander the streets without a main mission. Players can control Batman to break a few bones on any street in the city at any time. In this game, this feature can help players identify which targets can earn hero points after defeating them, and which ones can't. During the experience of operating Batman's actions last night, he saw with his own eyes that someone was originally marked as a civilian in the detective mode, but during his sneaky attempt to steal the battery, the mark on his body changed from civilian to enemy. At that time, Chu Cheng speculated that the identification of the enemy under the detective vision should be determined by the game system or the game character Batman. But now when Chu Cheng controlled Batman to come to this getaway with Murder Casino, he remembered that he seemed to have passed by here when he was patrolling the city with Batman last night. At that time, he also turned on the detective vision, but there was no enemy in the field of vision, and it seemed that all the people in it were identified as civilians. But when he came to the same address today and opened the detective vision perspective to scan the building again, he saw a large area of enemies in his field of vision. Could it be because they knew that this was a criminal's den? But it stands to reason that it was Chu who got the information. What does he have to do with Batman? Or can the characters in the game actually share the information they got during the day? Chu Cheng's first reaction to this idea was absurdity. But then he thought that controlling the game characters to act in reality seemed to be absurd enough. After surveying the outside of the building for a while, he quickly found a suitable entrance. Batman entered the interior through an open skylight and landed silently on the circular corridor of the high-rise building. Chu Cheng had never been to a real casino in his 2 lives. He only had a glimpse of it from the limited performances in film and television dramas. His impression of this kind of occasion is probably champagne, roulette tables and a large number of chips, mad gamblers who spend a lot of money, and ragged dealers who deal cards and play with him. After a while, he seems not so unfamiliar with this summary. After all, he has visited the Azure Brothel and Griffin High-End Brothel, mobile games Azalane and Girls Frontline, and the feeling seems to be not much different. But today, none of the above is there. The beautifully decorated hall is quiet. There is no gambler or dealer, only a large number of black sunglasses with guns scattered throughout the hall. There are faint shouting and cursing sounds coming from deeper in the hall. Chu Cheng observed and memorized the scattered positions of all the black sunglasses in the hall and quickly planned an attack route. Batman silently fell behind the 2 people on the high platform along the wall. The position where these 2 people are located has the best vision, and it is difficult to avoid their observation range for attacks on other positions, so they need to be dealt with first. Chu Cheng had originally thought of a response plan in case he was discovered or seen by other sentries, but he found that he had thought too much. The 2 men in black sunglasses were standing guard, but were actually chatting and not paying attention at all. Not to mention a sneak attack from behind. They might not even see them dancing across from them. It only took a moment to deal with the 2 men. Before that, Chu Cheng even hid in the shadows behind and eavesdropped on the conversation between the two men with the help of the auditory enhancement of the detective vision. The content of the conversation was also very simple. In short, the gang was frightened by this strange incident, and the casino was suspended. At this moment, the boss was discussing countermeasures with the first, second, third and other leaders in the casino. According to the current situation, they either had to surrender collectively and seek official protection, or they would probably pack up and run away in the hope of escaping this curse. One of the small fish was still lamenting that he was young and ignorant and fell into this quagmire without paying attention. That's not what he said. Just the vision of these few people who were on the lookout was basically like the referees of a certain country in Chu Cheng's previous life, who were physically disabled, but determined but fought hard on the front line of the Olympics. Or it was similar to a certain country's police investigating and reasoning about the victim's body with 7 bullets in the back. After thinking for a long time, they came to the conclusion that the cause of death was probably a stroke, right? Of course, it would be best if the villain's vision was like this. The game level was automatically downgraded to easy difficulty. Although the enemies were weak, there were indeed quite a few in the hall. The detective mode marked a total of 22 enemies, all of whom were armed with guns. It was not realistic to avoid everyone's vision and kill them all, but you could consider blocking the vision as much as possible to kill a few, and then turn off the lights and use the cover of darkness to solve them all in one fell swoop. After solving the 2 people on the commanding heights, Chu Cheng was about to continue along the planned route, but he was suddenly stunned. The detective vision screen showed that a new guest appeared from the direction of the gate. A cylindrical object was thrown into the room from somewhere and rolled to the feet of 2 people in black sunglasses who were patrolling in the hall. A grenade. Boom. The dazzling flames exploded under the confused expressions of the people wearing black sunglasses in the hall. The 2 people who were closer were directly blown away. The flying shrapnel in the flames swept down 2 more people, and they rolled on the ground and wailed. The door was kicked open. From the computer screen, Chu Cheng clearly saw that the Luo Yajin agent who had just parted with him not long ago appeared in the hall, with a cigar in his mouth and a submachine gun in his hand, and he fired directly at the hall. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 A Sudden Inspiration. Da-da-da-da. Luo Yajin appeared at the door in a swaggering manner, directly cosplaying as Rambo. His arrogant posture with a cigarette in his mouth was like silently shouting that you are all surrounded by me. Although Agent Luo is a bit bald and his middle-aged fat body makes people think of Maitreya Buddha, he is not compassionate at all. He held the submachine gun and fired without saying a word, hitting everything that moved and jumped. The gangsters who were closer to the door were already a little confused by the grenade explosion, and some were knocked down by the shockwave. At this time, they were dazed and seemed to see a group of long-legged bunny girls swaying in front of them. Before they could recover, they were physically saved by a volley of bullets. There is a saying that Namo Gatling Bodhisattva, 6 pure big pipes, 1 breath 3600 rotations, great compassion and great mercy to save the world. What? There are monsters? Eat my 6 pure armor piercing bullets. Facts have proved that times have changed and chanting is not as effective as bullets. Of course, Luo Yajin mainly attacked by surprise. There were many enemies in the hall, and not all of them were standing together. Grenades and rain of bullets could not suppress everyone. After coming to their senses, the criminals quickly organized a counterattack. Although their Taehang rifles were accurate and were no different from fire sticks in their hands most of the time, they were outnumbered. Moreover, submachine guns are good at suppressing firepower. Even if they are not aimed at a large area of bullets, they still have suppressive power. Luo Yajin quickly had to find a bunker to evade. The roulette table he was hiding in was blown into pieces by dense bullets. Chu Cheng found that this person might be just a hypocrite. In the daytime, he said in front of him in a lazy manner that killing, burying corpses, and building human piles were common. His words and deeds showed that whoever wanted to meddle in such trivial matters could do so, and whoever meddles in it would be stupid. As a result, not long after he turned around, he came to the community with a gun to bring warmth. Good fellow. Some people seem to leave work at a certain time and run away. Whoever works overtime is stupid, but in fact, 2 people secretly leave their teammates and sneak over to continue the battle. What does it mean? I will roll you to death. JPG. This won't do. At this time, the scum in the hall are not only smugglers and murderers in Chu Cheng's eyes, but also walking experience packs. Every time one of them is shot down by Luo Yajin, it means that Chu Cheng loses a hero point, which is a loss of 100 million after rounding up. Then Agent Luo must not be the only one to show off. A shooter came to attract fire from the front, so Chu Cheng didn't have to be as cautious as before. Batman used the cover of the shadow to airborne directly, crouched down and approached the 2 gangsters standing at the back, and used a move of double peaks to directly hit them both, and made them lose synchronization. The dense firepower and deafening gunshots covered the sound of his actions and attacks, and everyone was concentrating on the opposite Luo Yajin, and no one noticed that someone was stealing people in the back row. It was just like when Chu Cheng played competitive games. The back row was almost stabbed in the stomach, but the front row was facing the enemy head on. After a long time of fighting, the results were really like brothers going to the delivery room together, holding hands to watch the yin. To sum it up, there is only one sentence. It's useless. You never know what your teammates are doing. Chu Cheng soon found that this Agent Luo was also quite good. He could suppress so many opponents at the same time. He was shooting and adjusting his position. He was always looking for cover to avoid the opponent's gun line, and at the same time, he kept exposing the enemy to his field of vision by adjusting his position. If you look down from a god's perspective, it is comparable to the protagonist in the anti-Japanese war drama rushing into the enemy camp, wearing a shield that seems to be in at force field, but is actually the protagonist's halo and automatically immune to all the opponent's bullets, and single-handedly holding a turtle box from Nanshanmen to Penglai East Road. And such a ridiculous scene has become a reality here. Luo Yajin seemed to be able to see through the intentions of each of them, understand everyone's position, and predict and avoid all gun lines. He moved quickly with various movements that should have been too early for humans. The tables, chairs and load-bearing columns were blown up, and the debris flew all over the sky, which actually helped him hide from sight. And his bullets never missed. Even the enemies behind the cover could be shot into sieves by him at the right angle. In a short while, everyone in the hall was knocked to the ground. Batman cut in from the back of the enemy, walking on his knees the whole time, with the gunshots covering him. He was dressed in black, and he was a stealth master who was good at eliminating sounds, so Luo Yajin didn't see him the whole time. But not seeing doesn't mean not noticing. All 22 enemies in the hall were knocked down. Luo Yajin, holding a cigarette and a gun, stood up from behind the gambling table full of bullet holes and debris, walked through the hall filled with blood and gun smoke, and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. If it was someone else, it might be difficult to tell how many people were killed by him after such a fierce and chaotic gunfight. To put it bluntly, a gunfight like this is actually a firepower confrontation. Or 1,000 miles of fate. Who kills who depends entirely on fate. After the fight, no one can tell who is in the sea and who is lying on their side. But Luo Yajin is different. He knows clearly where each of his bullets went. There are a total of 22 people in the hall. It seems that he is in Rambo Washang, but he knows that he has actually only killed 9. The remaining 13 were not knocked down by his firepower, but by someone else. The most terrifying thing is that he can only infer the conclusion that there are other people here through unreasonable results, but he did not notice the existence of that person during the battle. Luo Yajin frowned. This kind of thing is almost unheard of. He is very confident in his ability. Any slight change in the battle situation, the movement and intention of each enemy are under his control. Even if the opponent is a special person, he is confident that it is impossible to completely avoid his ears and eyes. But someone just did it. It seems that he is now standing alone like a Terminator, but he knows that it is not true. There is something else here. It was like a ghost, silently passing through the hot battle, swinging its transparent sickle like the god of death. It killed 13 people casually, and he was in the battle, and didn't even notice it. Interesting. After figuring this out, Elio Yajin was not afraid, but laughed out loud. He looked around the empty hall full of mess, hummed and lit a new cigarette, and continued to walk deeper into the hall, stepping on the debris. He couldn't find the ghost, so he simply gave up looking for it. In any case, the purpose of his trip would not change. In fact, the purpose was very simple. Elio Yajin thought he was a very easy to understand person. In his opinion, some people in the city were like maggots in the gutter. It was okay if he didn't see them normally, but once he saw them, he would feel uncomfortable and nauseous. If he didn't get rid of them, he would never sleep well. He wanted to come, so he came. Just like when he broke the pedophile's neck in the interrogation room. It was just a whim. After finding the internal meeting room, Elio Yajin first emptied a whole magazine through the door as a gesture of friendship. After finishing the shooting, he kicked the door open and strode in. But there was no one inside. But the table was a mess, with smashed food and cigarette butts that had just been extinguished. Many signs showed that there were people here a few minutes ago. Elio Yajin soon found an inconspicuous small door in the room. It seems that these cowards had thought about the possibility of such a day when they built the casino and had already prepared a way out. The gang leaders who were in the meeting were indeed sneaking out of the back door under the leadership of their leader Nagase Tomohiko, and now they have just run into the underground parking lot. Nagase Tomohiko was cursing in his heart while running, and he also felt that things were really weird recently. My business was messed up. I kept a mistress and found out that the mistress was my sister, and a new turned out to be me. He just killed an unknown person and ended up feeling like he had seen a ghost these past few days. He was so exhausted that he hadn't figured out anything yet. Today, a group of crazy people suddenly appeared from nowhere and came to destroy his lair. But it didn't matter. He had worked his way up from the grassroots level of the organization to his current position, and he had experienced worse times before. He was confident that he could make a comeback. Snap. All the lights in the underground parking lot suddenly went out, and the pitch black darkness suddenly dominated the entire parking lot. The fleeing leaders felt their hearts tightened at the same time. Then, a voice that made them shudder seemed to sound on the cold wind, echoing in the empty parking lot. They heard laughter. Chapter 23 None. Elio Yajin chased along the back door of the conference room to the underground parking garage. He broke the door lock with a shot and kicked open the heavy iron door. A strange smell immediately hit him. The humid air brought the smell of blood, giving him a bad premonition. Pushing the door open and walking into the basement, a chill immediately seemed to rush into his body from the floor, as if he had walked into another world. The cold wind blew from nowhere, as if it brought the whispers of ghosts and gods. All the lights in the underground space flickered, and the bleak white light flickered rapidly. The narrow shadows were cast on the walls and the floor, constantly changing with the flickering of the lights, like a demon with bared fangs and claws. Elio Yajin took 2 steps, and soon felt the sticky touch of the soles of his shoes. He lowered his head, and found that the bright red blood had overflowed the soles of his boots at some point. The bloody quagmire mixed with things from the human body was spreading, and he was in the middle of the quagmire. He lifted his boots from the blood pond, and walked in the direction where the shadows were cast. Then he saw Nagase Tomohiko and the other leaders he was looking for. It looked like they were going nowhere. They were hung from the ceiling by their own intestines. All of these people were figures in the underworld before they died, but their end was horrible. Bloody straps stretched out from their ruptured abdomens and hung them from the ceiling, like dead pigs on hooks in a slaughterhouse. The lights continued to flicker, and the pale light illuminated the pool of blood, like pale lightning streaking across the sky. The moment the light came on, Elio Yajin inadvertently caught a glimpse of a slender shadow standing to his side. A unkempt figure, with messy hair covering half of his face, but the mouth that was exposed was pulled to the ears in a creepy arc, revealing a terrifying smile. Elio Yajin turned the muzzle of the gun without saying a word, and a volley of bullets swept over before the person could see clearly. The muzzle flash illuminated the darkness between the flashing lights, and smashed the convex reflector hanging on a load-bearing column in front into pieces with a clang. But there was no one in that direction. Elio Yajin frowned slightly. Was it an illusion? He then glanced at the rear view mirror of a sports car parked nearby, and saw the creepy figure in the mirror again, standing in a pool of blood and grinning. Without thinking, Luo Yajin turned his head and fired again. The bullet landed in the pool of blood and splattered blood, but there was nothing in that direction again. The gunshot stopped, and the parking lot returned to silence again, with only the dripping sound of blood from the corpse hanging in the air. Luo Yajin held his breath, and continued to scan slowly, without any signs. His pupils shrank, and he noticed something. He turned back suddenly, and the terrifying face was already close at hand. The man was standing less than a step away from Luo Yajin, and the smile on his cracked mouth seemed to be mocking. Luo Yajin immediately tried to turn the muzzle of the gun, but when he realized it, the barrel had been grabbed by the other party. So he made a quick decision, immediately discarded the gun, and pulled out the pistol, and shot the other party in the head. The impact detonated the gunpowder, and the metal bullet propelled by the explosion rushed out along the spiral texture, tearing the flesh, and piercing through the back of the man's head with the contents and bone fragments. But the man was unaware, and stretched out his 5 fingers, to reach out to Luo Yajin. His whole hand was soaked in blood, a shocking blood red. Luo Yajin was slightly startled. Although the infected with a high degree of infection have no pain and strong vitality, in most cases, fatal injuries such as headshots or heart piercings will still kill them. But headshots seem to be ineffective against the man in front of him. He avoided the other party's grab, took the opportunity to grab the arm that the other party handed over, and twisted it to try to remove it. But this force only felt that he encountered great resistance, and the arm was as motionless as if it was made of steel. His physical fitness is also better than his. The moment he realized this, the opponent's arm had already swung out. With just this single arm sweep, the huge force threw Luo Yajin away, and his back clanged and cracked the window glass of the Chevrolet behind him. The force was also amazing. Luo Yajin stood up as fast as he could, only to see that the man had approached him again, and grabbed his throat. The amazing grip made him feel like his throat was about to shatter, and his hands instinctively grabbed the other's wrist desperately. "Are you Guan Yi?" Luo Yajin asked with gritted teeth. He had already guessed it. The man in front of him with a crazy smile was probably Guan Yi, who accidentally witnessed the gang transaction at the beginning, was poured into the concrete pile, and then mysteriously disappeared from it. He was an infected person, and a very highly infected person. Perhaps the experience of being beaten by gangsters and pouring piles stimulated his infection to deepen. The strong vitality of the infected person allowed him to survive. The loneliness of being alone, the frustration of losing his job and being kicked out by the landlord, sleeping in the open, and then being beaten and killed by a gangster. All these experiences gave him a huge negative emotion, which quickly deepened the infection and gave him an extremely powerful strength. "No, I'm not." Guan Yi spoke with his cracked mouth, and there seemed to be a smile in his voice. "I'm not Guan Yi, and I'm not anyone. I'm nothing." "What?" Luo Yajin still tried to pry open the other's arm, but the hand was too strong, and he seemed powerless. What people fear most, Agent Luo, is nothing, the uncertainty of the future. You force them to look at this point, let them stare at the nothingness called life, and try to find meaning, and there will only be one end. He came close to Luo Yajin, so close that the agent could even smell a bloody stench from the cracked smile. "That is, they will go crazy." He let out a series of strange laughs, and the flickering lights occasionally illuminated the bloody smiling face. "So this is the meaning of my existence. I'm the incarnation of the nothing, the thing that everyone fears. All of what I have done, all of this." He looked back at the poor creatures hanging from the ceiling with miserable deaths. "This is just a preliminary test I did to verify my ability. I think among all the boring people, you should be the one who understands this the most, right, Officer Luo?" Luo Yajin didn't have time to think about what he meant, and his brain could no longer think. He felt a sharp pain in his throat, and his breathing seemed to be cut off, and his strength to struggle was getting smaller and smaller. But just as his vision was gradually blurred, he vaguely saw a bat. The huge bat spread its huge wings and glided in this direction, bringing with it a whirring sound like the flapping of wings. Guan Yi was caught off guard and kicked hard by the swooping bat, and his whole body flew out. Chapter 24 Mage. Luo Yajin greedily inhaled the smelly air into his lungs and coughed violently twice. When he recovered, he could see the shadow that fell from the sky. Only then did he realize that it was not a bat monster, but a person. However, whether the person's brain was normal was still questionable, because he obviously dressed himself up as a bat. What kind of psychopath would dress himself up like this? But if he was just a madman, he seemed to be a bit more advanced. Although it was difficult to see the details under the flickering lights, Luo Yajin could tell from just a glance that the equipment on this weirdo was not cheap. The armor looked like some kind of fiber material that was very resistant to pulling, and the key parts were also equipped with reinforced armor plates. He took a quick look and felt that the bulletproof and explosion-proof performance of this toy must be stronger than the armor of their 9 departments. Luo Yajin soon thought that the eyewitness in the clean building also said that he saw a bat-like monster. Unless there is another lunatic in this city who likes to perform performance art in the middle of the night as a rodent, it is most likely the person in front of him. The Guan Yi who was kicked out stood up and twisted his neck joint in a strange posture. Huh? What are you? He grinned and looked at the other person with his head tilted. At the same time, Batman, or Chu Cheng, who was watching these behind him through the screen, was also looking at him cautiously. This bloody scene that caused physical discomfort, coupled with the man's weird smile, plus the crazy filter of this incident from beginning to end, naturally made Chu Cheng think of Batman's only designated and well-known enemy, the Joker. Speaking of Batman, it's really not easy. Back then, a Joker turned Gotham upside down, and Batman was once so anxious. As a result, I don't know what's wrong with people these days. Everyone is always saying that the Joker is me, which made the Batmaster wake up and become an enemy of the whole world. People are numb. Now that I have come to the other world, I thought I could finally get rid of the daily life of loving and hating the Joker, but the Joker's spiritual successor suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Chu Cheng felt that, if he were Batman, he might be cursing inwardly. NMD, the Joker is still chasing me. Be careful. Luo Yajin said, this guy's not easy to deal with. Although he was not sure where this guy dressed like a bat came from the signs so far, it is obviously more likely that the other party is a friendly force. But the situation is still not optimistic. This bat pretending to be crazy may also be an infected person, or maybe a special person. But he doesn't think this bat crazy person is the opponent on the opposite side, because he just experienced it himself. He knew that the power of this Guan Yi was one of the best even among the infected. Luo Yajin himself was already highly infected among all the agents of the Special Service 9 department. Except for the superpowered people, who have awakened special abilities, there were few people in the entire 9 departments who were better than him in physical fitness. While thinking, Guan Yi had already taken the initiative to rush forward. He was very fast and rushed to Batman in an instant, stretching out his bloody palm and trying to reach out. Batman had no expression on his face and only slightly moved aside, and the 5 fingers stained with blood almost brushed his nose. Then he lowered his center of gravity and suddenly stretched out his right hand from under the cloak and pressed it towards Guan Yi's chest. The next moment, in Luo Yajin's stunned eyes, Guan Yi's body suddenly flew backwards with a low roar, knocked over a parked car with a bang, smashed the car door and collapsed, and the whole car turned over on the ground. Luo Yajin? Question mark? What kind of power is this? Even for the infected, isn't this kind of power a little too outrageous? And look at the weirdo in bat costume, standing there calmly, with his hands hidden under the big black cloak like a cup. The whole wind and cloud look like he didn't exert any strength at all, and even has the demeanor of master in martial arts. Agent Luo's eyes became complicated when he looked at him. But he didn't know that Batman was not an infected person at all, and he didn't have superpowers. He just had money. As the saying goes, the poor rely on mutations and the rich rely on technology, and Batman is undoubtedly a model of the latter. Although he is not like the rich man next door who puts a tin can on his body all day long to perform justice from heaven when he disagrees with someone, Batman's multifunctional belt also has many portable and useful props. For example, what Batman used just now is a disposable micro thruster. On the surface, it looks like an inconspicuous little button, but once the switch is activated, the little button will eject a powerful tail flame and burst out with amazing propulsion horsepower. The usage of this thing includes, but is not limited to, like just now, installing it on the enemy to make the opponent drift directly in a hearse, placing it on an object in the scene to turn it into a mud truck and run rampant, or installing it on yourself to cosplay a low-profile Iron Man. There are quite a lot of messy props in Wayne's Batcave. During the novice tutorial, Chu Cheng spent a whole day in the novice simulation to learn and memorize the functions and uses of each piece of equipment. Many of them made him exclaim that it was the president sitting in a convertible, which opened his mind. It can only be said that only you can't think of it, and there is nothing that Wayne Group can't do. But there is a very realistic problem that players can't bring them all every time. Chu Cheng never thought that capacity would be a problem for Batman. After all, since the blue fat man with a 4-dimensional pocket appeared in the second dimension, the 4-dimensional chrysanthemum has become a standard feature of anime characters. Although Batman doesn't have this ability, he has a black technology belt. The belt, which looks like a few small grids, is used to create the effect of a blue fat man's pocket in movies, TV shows and animations. It may carry darts, grenades, grappling hook guns, respirators, flash bombs, smoke bombs, etc. You can even find bat shark repellent from it. But fantasy is beautiful and reality is harsh. The game ruthlessly reminds Chu Cheng that Batman can only carry a maximum of 12 pieces of equipment, except the grappling hook gun at a time. If there are more, the multifunctional belt will not fit. Therefore, players need to choose what equipment to use in advance before each battle. Normally, you can return to the Batcave to change equipment at any time, but not during combat and missions. Any normal person's bones may be broken after being hit like this, but Guan Yi is still unharmed. He quickly climbed up from the other end of the car, still smiling. Interesting little trick. But before he finished speaking, Batman raised his hand and swung it, and a ball of light blue light suddenly drew a parabola and swung it towards Guan Yi. Guan Yi dodged flexibly, but he didn't expect that the thing was like a magnet. When it approached Guan Yi, it was sucked towards him, as if it was attracted by gravity, and stuck to his torso. Zzzz, the small object released a strong electric current, and countless electric snakes visible to the naked eye immediately wrapped around Guan Yi's body, causing him to twitch and emit black smoke. The throwing electric shock device can be attached to the target object to release a strong electric shock. But after a twitch and black smoke all over his body, Guan Yi's neck tilted, and his body twisted and twisted to continue walking towards this side. His skin was burned and cracked in many places, and his body was filled with the smell of burnt flesh and blood. The muscles on his face were stiff due to the electric shock, but his smile looked even more hideous. Chu Cheng raised his eyebrows. Can you still move like this? This health bar is really thick. In this case, Batman raised his hand and swung it again. Bang! A spherical object suddenly exploded at Guan Yi's feet, and a large amount of gel was released instantly, expanding at an alarming speed. The black technology gel developed by Wayne Group is usually compressed in a spherical bomb in a highly concentrated form. The metal shell breaks at the moment of detonation, and the highly concentrated gel will expand rapidly in geometric volume when it comes into contact with the air. And the final result is just like now. Guan Yi was completely wrapped in the expanding gel, like being stirred into a ball of cotton. The gel quickly solidified and took shape within 3 seconds, like a sculpture standing there. Guan Yi was trapped in the sculpture. He still maintained the posture of stretching his hand, and his bloody palm struggled to stretch out from the gel. His 5 fingers were fixed at a position a millimeter away from Batman's mask, and he couldn't move his whole body. Batman stood there expressionlessly, without moving or dodging, as if everything was under control. Luo Yajin looked at this bat weirdo, and was speechless for a long time. So, this person is actually a mage. P.S. It's a new month. Please give me a monthly ticket and a recommendation ticket. Chapter 25. Don't you have a plane at home? That's it. Luo Yajin didn't know what to say for a moment. After the weirdo landed and stood firm, he barely moved a step. He used the shock, electrotherapy, and earth escape skills one after another, and stood still to output the whole time. After a certain unnamed mage named Gan opened the precedent of the Berserker Mage, there are not many mages who can throw fireballs properly these days. Interesting. It's getting more and more fun. Guan Yu was stuck in a lot of solidified gel and couldn't move, but his face was still wearing a weird smile, and his eyes were rolling like a black pearl, dark and deep and unpredictable. I understand. He stared at Batman. You are the opposite of nothing. Just like light and shadow, water and fire, and you and me. He seemed to think he had told a great joke, and laughed wildly, and the violent laughter caused the muscles stuck in the gel to tremble violently. Unknown madman. Luo Yajin muttered vaguely. He stood up and walked to Batman. Okay, I don't know who you are. Anyway, thank you for your help. But I still have to find out your identity. You have to come with me. He stopped talking here. At this time, Luo Yajin and Chu Cheng, who was far behind the computer, heard laughter. It was not the laughter of the madman in front of them, but from all directions. Several loud laughs overlapped in one place, as if a whole team of laughing people surrounded this place, reflecting back and forth in this closed space, echoing clearly. They were like a laughing band. The sealed Guan Yu was the conductor of the band, and everyone hiding around cooperated with his melody. Then shadows appeared all around. The lights continued to flicker, and every light tube in the underground garage seemed to be on the verge of death. The ghost shadows gradually appeared under the flickering light, and one after another, they shot their eyes at them. They were the laughing infected people who had been infected in this gang so far, and should have died. Luo Yajin immediately pulled out his gun and shot at an infected person, who was closer to them. But the bullet only went through the other person's laughing mouth, and went straight into the wall behind him. Spirit body? Luo Yajin was slightly surprised. Is the mental power strong enough to release the spiritual body? If the infected person's mental power goes out of control and exceeds the upper limit of the physical body, the infected person's body will self-destruct. In this case, the infected person's mental power will generally be destroyed just like the board of directors in the clean building. But there is a very small probability that the mental power will remain after the physical body is destroyed, and the runaway will become the form of a spiritual body. At this time, Luo Yajin suddenly thought of a very terrifying thing. If each of the spiritual body phantoms that appeared underground at this time came from the dead laughing infected person, it means that all the people infected in this incident left behind spiritual bodies after death. But shouldn't the remaining spiritual bodies be a low probability event? Is it the special ability of the source of infection in this incident? Just as he was thinking, he saw that the laughing shadows were stretched out and turned into thin black lines, connecting to the body of Guan Yu stuck in the gel. Cracks quickly appeared on the solid gel, and within 3 seconds, it exploded into countless solidified soil. At this time, Guan Yu inside had long lost his human form. His skin was replaced by something like jelly, and his body expanded rapidly. Tentacles covered with flesh thorns pierced out from the slimy body. One eye after another opened along the surface of the tentacles, and the eyeballs moved strangely. The human skin was torn and devoured, and the flesh was chewed and destroyed, leaving only the indescribable twisted monster. The underground garage could not accommodate this rapidly expanding body, and the ceiling was crushed and cracked. Tons of debris and dust fell down, and the twisted body broke through the ground and rushed onto the block, dancing its terrifying tentacles wildly. Its body shape was very irregular, unlike any creature on Earth, and it was difficult to describe what shape it was. Its tentacles were studded with barbs, and its surface was covered with eyes, as if it was observing the world from multiple angles with its countless eyes. The pedestrians on the street were unprepared for this sudden situation. After a brief stagnation, some people soon began to scream. Panic spread, and traffic was in chaos. What followed was madness. At first, it happened to a few people. A man who was running away couldn't help but let out a laugh from between his teeth, and then with that laugh as the fuse, the laughter began to get louder and louder until it was out of his control. He laughed wildly and kicked his terrified companion next to him, then rode on his companion and started punching and kicking him. Soon, more and more people were there. The laughter was like a terrifying infectious disease. It spread rapidly, and more people fell into its pace. A child climbed on a man with laughter and bit off his bloody ear. An old man in an open-air restaurant laughed so hard that he was out of breath, picked up a bottle of wine and smashed it on the forehead of a lucky passerby nearby. A car hit a fire hydrant. The huge impact deformed the entire front of the car, and water rushed into the sky. The fire hydrant spun and crashed into the glass window of a shop. The driver lay on the airbag and laughed so hard that he could hardly breathe. While laughing, he controlled the car with a severely deformed front to reverse and back up, ready to aim at the next target. The monster seemed very satisfied. It waved countless tentacles happily, as if it was cheering and dancing. The irregular main body of the body still had a mouth-like structure, a huge mouth filled with mushy red flesh, like a smiley face cut on the skin with a knife. The spirit is rampaging. The situation is very serious. Luo Yajin crawled back to the ground from underground and pressed the headset to communicate with the headquarters. What is the specific situation? Specifically, the rampaging spirit has turned into a monster with a physical body? How could it become like this? How the hell do I know? At this time, the street was in chaos. While trying to avoid the crazy crowd, he approached the direction of the giant monster. Calm down, Agent Luo. The fighter jet just took off from the deck, the operator told him. It's expected to arrive at the scene in 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Luo Yajin looked at the people who were laughing so hard that they were almost choking, and the arrogant beast between the buildings. He was not sure if there would be anything worth saving here in 10 minutes. A sudden gust of wind almost made it difficult for him to breathe. The rumbling sound of the engine shook the sky and the earth, like the roar of a beast protesting. Luo Yajin turned his head and looked in the direction of the sound. The huge black steel raptor had an advanced structure that was almost dreamlike, a streamlined design, sharp horns and wings, and light blue plasma flames sprayed vertically, looking like a huge bat with its wings spread out. He was stunned to see the weirdo in a bat costume walking past him, raising a gun and shooting a hook with a snap to hang on the plane hovering in the air. Luo Yajin was stunned. Wait, you have another plane? Batman ignored him. The fibers contracted rapidly, pulling his entire body off the ground towards the plane hovering in the air. That reaction seemed to be asking, why? Don't you have a plane at home? Luo Yajin was confused. So who exactly is this bad madman? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.